Okay. So we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. It is 6:03 p.m. on Tuesday, August 20th, 2024, and this is a regular meeting of the Berkeley Town Council. And first order of business is the pledge of allegiance. Now the flags over here. It used to be over there. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic. Okay, so we're checking to see if anybody has conflicts of interest with anything on the agenda. Misty? Me? No. Paul?
No.
April? No. Okay. So we are moving on with the consent agenda. And according to Crystal, according to Crystal, she has received edits to the minutes from everyone. So and then I believe you included those. Yeah. Okay. So she got everybody's edits. She input them. And the other item on the consent agenda is approval of this public entity resolution. And as I indicated in the work meeting the other day, this is for the town treasurer to be able to access the our PTIF accounts, to access them online and move money from there to the bank account, town bank accounts, and this has to have a resolution. So, as you remember, Paul proposed in the work meeting that we would include this in the consent agenda. And the one that was online that all of you have copies of just had, this had Becky's signature, but I have the one that's got, Candace's signature also. So it's all ready for me to sign and have notarized tomorrow. So a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, so we are going to have the reports next. Our zoning administrator, Jean, is out sick, so we have no report from the zoning administrator on the status of the commercial projects at this time. And so I will take a report from the planning commission, and that will be Kent. You're gonna do the report from planning commission for me?
Planning Commission, excuse me, Planning
It's up.
Commission met and has forwarded to you the sign ordinance. The ordinance was worked on long and hard. This is something we believe as a commission strongly that the town needs to have some uniformity and some control for commercial businesses for signage. So we hope you consider our recommendation. We also are discussing and moving forward let me go back to the Peak property, which is the highway resort zone. We have sent that to you, and I need to make an explanation of that. We were short a commissioner. I was pro temp chairing, thanks to the help of Misty, keeping me in line as to how to go forward with that. But in a confusion and concern, because we were short a commissioner, where we had voted before, I felt 3-2. It looked and favored this, which I was against, the zoning change. I had an opportunity to make it 2-2 and kill it, but I didn't. I voted yes for it and moved it on to you to consider. So the commission voted, 3-1 to send it to you. And I want you to know my explanation, and I think I've spoken to you before about my concerns about the zone, about the propriety of it. It hasn't been zoned highway resort zone before, I think for reasons. And I think you have our notes and minutes that you can consider this as you place it forward. Some say it's an engineering issue, it's always gonna be an engineering issue in the end. And that's really true, but is it right to take away, residential property potential? And place it where it may affect, our town as far as traffic and light and dark sky and things like that. Thank you for that.
Ken, sorry to interrupt,
Question?
just so you know that if for the next time, if this occurs, even if you're not a tie vote, it would come up as no recommendation.
That's what I thought, that's what I was gonna say.
So even if you would have went 2-2, it still would have came up, but it would have came up as no recommendation.
You would, your vote, if a tie vote would not have killed it. It
Great.
would have just come to the town council as a no recommendation.
Okay, good, and that, I appreciate that, and then I got to give you my personal pitch.
Okay.
Let's see. I wanted to also kind of bring you up to date as far as dark sky ordinance is basically ready to present to you. We hopefully will be able to bring that forward this next month in a meeting and vote on it to send it up to you. There is an issue that, one of our commissioners has, in mind. And so there's some, planning and scheduling things that we have to navigate to be able to get into that. So it's gonna be, end of September or into October before it comes forward to you. Any questions you might have on that at this point? Okay, I think we've had lots of discussions about dark sky. What else did I have? I think that's about it. We are working on some other issues and a big agenda for us to cover and encourage us getting a full quorum as quickly as we can.
Oh, don't worry, we've got several things on the tonight's agenda that's all gonna get sent to you, so you're gonna have,
Right.
you're gonna have a lot of work. Okay, thank you, Jean. I thought you were out sick today. I was not expecting you to be here. Okay. So you can give them the zoning and report.
We did not have a DRC meeting this last month, so not a lot has changed, but for the purpose of the public, I'll go back over each one of these with you. The Unplugged Resort has attended 2 DRC meetings and submitted their application for a building permit, and that's located on Mesa Road. The LaBrie Project has attended 1 DRC meeting, is approved and under construction for gas station convenience store. The final plat has been approved, I understand, this week. And so they'll begin moving on to the next portion of their project. The Rib at Zion, which is the old Red Coyote.
The rib,
Yeah, that's what, I don't know, I don't come up with these names. So.
okay. All right.
They've attended 1 DRC meeting or approved under construction. Virgin Goods, the old Virgin Goods store, they attended 2 DRC meetings. Their CUP application is in process. Their building permit has been approved for the cafe only, but they have not come back with finalized plans on the rest, so that's kind of on hold until we hear something more from them. White Bison, attended their DRC meetings that are in process on their stuff still. Nothing's really changed there, other than they're working on it. Quail Mesa has attended 2 DRC meetings, and working towards submitting their final plat and upgrade to the private road. Design Park KOA is approved and under construction, and you can probably tell me more about that one as you drive by the land, because they're moving pretty quick, so. And then Tom Lacoste has attended his first DRC meeting, and you're aware of what happened with the commission on that, and I see it's on your agenda tonight, so. If you need anything, call me up here for minutes. Any questions for me, or anything, you want me to follow up with you on? A pin at the ready.
I think I had a question, let me go back. So Unplug, their building permit has not yet been approved, even though they've submitted their application, but they have not yet gotten the building
Further
permit.
review, I believe.
Okay.
The building inspector has to go through all that stuff. One of the things, when these type of businesses come into play where they're bringing in something that's pre-constructed, it gets a little bit tricky because the building inspector has to verify with the engineer in whatever state they're in, that it meets the Utah requirements as well, so it kind of gets bogged down and stuff like that. Until they get plans through to make sure that they were actually run through a good engineering firm and that it meets Utah standards as well.
And so Quail Mesa, I know they started working on that road. I didn't know if you were aware of that, but that started like this week or late last week.
Yeah.
Like equipment arrived and they've been bringing it up the road.
Yeah.
What's happening up there, I don't know, but I just see.
I think they're just doing road improvements right now to meet, the standards that were set with their plans, but building hasn't started yet, so.
Any other questions? You guys have anything? Go ahead.
I know at the last meeting, we asked if you could put maybe some scheduling milestones on here, like maybe when the building permit was issued. Maybe when they plan to start construction or have started construction. I mean, it would be helpful because we see that it's under construction, but it doesn't really tell us.
Yeah, but I ran into some problems doing that, mainly because a lot of the stuff is out of their control, so they were like, well, we'd like to give you that, but example was McReed, they said, well, until we get a final plat, we can't tell you what we're gonna do next, because that got held up for quite a while, so I'll continue, because I know that was the one that was the most
Don't
concerning,
worry about
but
it.
we'll work on it.
You wanted dates, I know I was reviewing all the minutes from the previous meetings and you had requested this at the last meeting. I know you wanted dates, what else?
What dates top it as far as.
Well, I think that he's got the dates, no, he's got the date for like this. Spreadsheet, but I mean, if we had dates for like when the building permit was issued. So we kind of know, because there are some time limits on the permits and things like that. It give us an idea how the project is moving along. And then, I mean, just maybe when they started their groundwork construction, just, I mean, we can see that driving around town, but it would be nice to just have it itemized.
Anything other than
No, that would probably be helpful.
okay.
everything. We'll be sure to send you a link to bring and watch this interview once it is finished. So, anyway, and I think that'll probably be coming, usually he sends those out to the clerk, so. Anyway, kind of condensed this down, I have a lot of stuff here, but, on the public health advisory with the rains and everything that's coming up, I think, everybody ought to know. I still have a hard time with all these names, we're on the public health advisory. And an invasive mosquito has been found in your community. Mosquito control crews will be inspecting traffic and treating in the area. Aedes aegypti is known as an urban container mosquito that feeds almost exclusively on humans and can breed successfully in yards such as those found in Washington County. The Aedes aegypti bite at any time of the day. These pesky mosquitoes enjoy feasting on ankles, wrists, and areas of thin skin. While Aedes aegypti is a violent nuisance mosquito can carry disease, it is not considered to be a vector of endemic diseases in Utah. Mosquito is black and white banding and is relatively small. They don't fly very far, but when they lay eggs, so it can last in the soil for quite a while. And anyway, just make sure with all the rain that you don't have any containers sitting out to get water in, that sit there for a while. We have quite a problem with pork straws and things like that, but anything, Sean was at my house the other day, rained this, we walked out and my wife had put a little thing out there, planter she had that had died and had a little thing on it, no water run off, and he was sitting there about that much water, and he says, "Oh, a mosquito container." Okay. So anyway, it's just good to, be aware of that. Their totals on their traffic and the mosquitoes have gone to about double what it's been last year. Well, treatments, total larva treatments today, 1,371. In the last year comparison for the whole year, it was 1,345. And total sites inspected today is 4,030. So they've been really busy. Anyway, I just wanted to mention one thing. I don't know how many people have heard of mosquito fish. I haven't heard of them, but anyway, we've got a memorandum of understanding on, they're using mosquito fish all over the state and actually all over the country. And there's fish who feed on mosquito larvae. But we're on the Virgin River and they might, anyway. We're not doing anything with that this year, we may in the future, but the reason why is because it's so expensive to get them here and, get them put in, and there's only a few places we can use them. You can't have them in an area that's going to, like a pond or something that's maybe a flood will come down and wash it into the Virgin River. So, there's one case, somebody down here in the lower part of town that decided, and the old timers used to do this, they dig a hole and the water is so close to surface that it fills up and they can water their livestock. And been there for a few days and Sean, or a few weeks, Sean decided to go over, just look at it, and he said the whole puddle that he had there was moving because of the larvae in it. And this is a place that we could use the mosquito fish because there's no way it's gonna be washed out into the river, but anyway, didn't have his stuff, he had to clear down to St. George, use material, come up and treat that pond before the mosquitoes hatched out.
Okay.
So anyway, are there any questions? whether I covered everything or not, but,
Think you did.
okay.
Jay, thank you.
Thank you.
We want to be open for. Do Yeah. Okay, to go ahead and do the presentation now. Oh, okay. I'm gonna do open forum before we do Doug's presentation, so, is there anyone in the room here who has anything they would like to bring to our attention? Anything that is not on the agenda?
Gene Garotti. This last little flood we had coming down North Creek, as some of you may have heard, washed away a few people that they managed to rescue. It was brought to my attention by our tubing company that the USGS is willing and able to put a, I don't know the proper terminology for it, but a gauge on the bridge up by the Staples compound where they can get about a 15-minute warning to the town in the event that the water goes above a certain level. I think he said it runs around 20 grand on the part of the town, but this one that came through was fast enough that this lady and her kids got caught in it and swept them a little ways downriver, a couple of them, but the rescue agencies were able to take care of them. But something that we might want to consider for the town. Thanks.
Thanks. I know that Adam talked to, Randy Hiller about it, and Randy told me he's pursuing if we can get, he's gonna talk to the state emergency people to see about getting a state flood aid like that. So he's gonna be up there next week, so he's gonna follow this with them. So we will be able to report back on that. But I was wondering, in fact, today after, I finished talking with Randy and I was driving to St. George, I was wondering, why we wouldn't want one over here elsewhere, why just North Creek? Why wouldn't we want one elsewhere on, the river?
So the Virgin River has multiple, North Creek doesn't. The one that they do have is so close that there's no warning. By the time it hits there, it's at the.
Okay, so it's just North Creek we're worried about, okay. All right.
So 15 minutes doesn't seem very long, so,
It's long. Yeah.
No, I agree.
I mean, how would you let people know?
Well, it's like when I was talking to Randy today, I said, well, what are we supposed to do? Have a siren like they have for tornadoes in the Midwest? I mean, what can we do in 15 minutes? So,
It does have, it's an app, so people at the RV park would get it, it gets an instant warning even before it triggers to go to the website. They would get an alert on their phone saying it's reached this level.
okay,
Sorry.
that answer, okay. Yes, Kent.
Kent Peterson. I've been here before to talk about this, arose as it rose. And I was saddened to get a notice in my utility bill about making sure that it encouraged us to vote for a name of the old Sierra Bell Park. And I'm talking to the council right now because I have such passion about the city, in my opinion, my feeling, taking away the opportunity for citizens over on the north side of town to have a beautiful city park where playground sets can be built, where people can feel comfortable to come and run their dogs, or we can plan for it, for heaven's sakes, and have a dog corner where dogs can play together, where kids can come and play on swing sets and stuff. But here what we've done is we've gone ahead and said that this is something that we want to do to help a commercial business, to change the name so that they can get a liquor license. I don't have a problem against liquor. I have a problem against somebody taking away a city park for the north side of SR9, where my grandkids can play and other children can play, or the 30 families and the 30 homes that are on that site of SR9 and in the Pocketville neighborhood can have a place under the trees to play. We really only have these two parks, one on the north side and one the town park, where people can play and we can have that. I know that the plans aren't there yet. Maybe they're here as to what it can be for our citizens. But I don't know that we can ever have playground equipment again. as long as there's a business there with a liquor license. And so I encourage you to think as a council and as individuals, what the neighborhood wants. Then a point of humor, I was happy to see Lenny here today. I've asked her to be my attorney, in fact, to if somebody wants to come after me or feeling this way. But Lenny has strong feelings, like a lot of people who have been here all their lives and through generations. This is such a precious piece of property for our citizens. And I think we're putting a business ahead of that. And I think we should be planning for what that park is to be, not what it's to be for a business. Thanks.
Anyone else? But, okay.
I got a couple of items, years ago, when I was mayor, I didn't used to have a place in the newsletter for mayor and everybody else. So I brought this up to council, I thought, I think there would be a place in here for mayor. And the town council at times says, well, I think we ought to spread that around, that we ought to, have town council, each member, do a comment. And that worked out really well until they got kind of used to it, and Dorsey had to try to find people last minute to get it in, but I think I would like to myself. Or what the rest of the council have to say, and I'm sure that, I think that's a good way for the town to get to know the people that are on the council. Just an idea. Talk about water rate, but I think that's on the agenda, so I won't talk about that. Anyway, I agree with what Kent was saying, about park. That property was given to the town as a park, and I think we should honor that, but, the reason we made this name thing is because, according to their newsletter, they can't sell beer and wine there, with it being called a park. But, anyway, and the last thing, when I grew up, there were 2 gas stations in this town. One on the top of the hill and one over at the 101. And kind of excited about a gas station being here, and then all of a sudden I don't see anything happening, and somebody said, well, the city shut them down. And I thought, well,
Who ever told you that?
maybe if they sell beer and wine, they could get back to working with that.
The town did not shut down the gas station, please, just.
Okay. Anyway, all right, I'm glad to hear that. Okay. So, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. We're moving on. Doug, please come up and do your presentation.
First of all, I need the last slide in that deck. The first presentation is the last presentation. Good evening, Mayor Kraus, members of the council. My name is Doug Bennett. I'm with the Washington County Water Conservancy District. And I'm going to give you a presentation related to excess water use surcharges. As you know, the town of Virgin came to the water district and requested that the water district include them in the regional water service agreement. The board of the district agreed to that, and while the town of Virgin will have all of the rights of any other city that subscribes to that, you'll have the same access to water that this city of St. George, Washington, Santa Clara, all of those in the metro area have. You also will have to take on some of the same responsibilities that those cities have that are contained within that agreement. And so when I was meeting with Mayor Kraus about the landscape standards, I said, and don't forget, we also have to talk about these excess water use surcharges. So what I wanted to do is just give you a presentation on what they are And to let you know that it's one of the items that every jurisdiction that's in our regional water service agreement has to comply with. Next slide. Clicking in charge of that, clicking down. Whoops. That was up. We need to go down.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think, I'm not gonna belabor this graph, but I think everybody in Washington County knows that we rely wholly upon the Virgin River Basin. And the Virgin River Basin can be very kind to us in some years, as it was last year, but it also can be very dry, as it had been in some of the previous years. So water supplies are very scarce, and we don't have a lot of diversity in supplies. Next slide. One of the challenges that we have is the amount of water that we're allocating to each household, and as the communities tend to grow, the state came to us and said, how are you going to assure that every time you connect a new home, that you're still gonna have an adequate supply? And so the state regulates the water districts, and the water districts in turn ask the municipalities for their collaboration. And it used to be that prior to 2023, every time a new home connected to the system, we were anticipating that we had to have about 9/10 of an acre foot of water, about 250,000 gallons of water, or more than that, about 280,000 gallons of water per year to be able to serve that home. With the growth in the region, the limited water supply, we had to show the state that we could build new homes that would have a lower water demand. And we told the state that we were gonna be supplying new homes in the region with 0.59 acre feet of water supply, which is about 180,000 gallons of water per year. Next slide. So there's a state enforcement component. So we implemented an excess water use surcharge. All of the communities agreed to it, and the intent of that surcharge is to reduce the consumption of the highest water users. In many communities, the top 10% of water users may be consuming 30% or more of the community's total water. So the point was to send a financial or fiscal message to those high water users to encourage them to reduce their use. Also, in the standards that you'll be looking at later on your agenda, we have compelled all the new homes coming into the region to be highly efficient from the get-go. It makes no sense to let people move in, plant giant lawns, have inefficient fixtures and appliances, and then go chase them with rebate money, asking them to change it, when we have the opportunity to build those homes as efficiently as we can from the get-go, using the water efficiency standards. So these standards assure the state of Utah that Washington County will have an adequate future supply. The funds collected from these surcharges will all be steered to conservation programs, including programs that help municipalities, such as Virgin, be able to obtain money to make improvements to their own municipal infrastructure. So if you had a park where you thought we could redo our irrigation system and save water, we could put smart irrigation controllers on some of our facilities, we would have money for those kinds of improvements. Surcharges can be waived occasionally. Probably most people in this room have had a leak before, or a plumbing leak is unknown to you, and then you get a giant water bill. We would not surcharge water use that was not due to the homeowner's negligence. So in some unforeseen circumstance, the surcharges could be refunded to the homeowner or the property owner. And it's important to note, I know you have secondary water here that comes from a canal company or a similar private company. This does not apply to water that's secondary water that's coming from those other sources. This would only apply to municipal water. Next slide. So when this originally came out, there was one kind of surcharge. And it was what you see on the left. It applied to properties built before January 1, 2023. And it was, these were, existing homes, existing businesses and properties within the region. They're allowed to use up to 36,000 gallons per month without incurring a surcharge. 36,000 is the threshold. Just because I like personally saying this, my entire annual water use last year in Ivins was 39,000 gallons for the entire year. So 36,000 is a pretty substantial amount of water in a single month. We really truly are only trying to target the highest, heaviest water users. only potable water is gonna be surcharged, not secondary water. The surcharge is not that potent, so I know your rates, your tiered rates go up somewhere into the $5 per 1,000 gallon range. This surcharge would add $1 per 1,000 gallons when you exceeded the 36,000 gallon threshold. The municipality, there's some overhead in collecting this. People call, they're gonna call Crystal, but people are gonna call when they get a surcharge, what is this, how does it work, et cetera, et cetera. So the water district allows the municipality to retain 5% of the fees collected to account for that administrative overhead that's required. Now, as we implemented water efficiency standards and we said we were gonna build homes more efficiently, our board and the member agencies decided that there should be more stringent standards and more stringent surcharges for new development. So if your property was connected to the system after January 1, 2023, you'd be subject to the restrictions on the right. So these properties should, we believe, be able to comply with this because they were built to these very high standards. They have landscape standards and so forth. Their thresholds are seasonal. In the winter, they can have 8,000 gallons of culinary water or potable water. In the spring, 15,000, in the summer, 20,000, and then going back down. The idea is to get them to manage their water with the seasons. So we give them more water in the summer, less water in the winter. It was deemed to be, we did a lot of analysis and we deemed that 8,000 gallons was adequate to meet the indoor needs of a very large family during the winter months, and that we supply additional water without surcharge in the summer months. If the property has both culinary water and secondary water and it's a new home, they will be surcharged on any usage above 8,000, because we know they're using the secondary water to irrigate their landscape outside. So it'll purely be applied to the culinary. The surcharge is very potent for new development. It's $10 per 1,000 gallons in excess of the threshold. So if these people are paying the city $4 or $5 per 1,000 gallons to pay the city's fees for delivering that water, they could incur the surcharge and be paying as much as $15 per 1,000 gallons. So it's a very stringent surcharge intended to get people's attention. In this case, the municipality retains 10% of the fee. That policy was adopted a few years later, and the negotiations were that the municipalities would like to have a little bit more of that revenue to be able to administer it. As you can imagine, when somebody's paying $15 per 1,000 gallons, the phone calls are a little bit longer. So it requires a little more effort. Next slide.
Before you go on,
Yes.
question.
Yes.
So this means that in our water billing system, we need to have indicated somehow in the system the homes were built after January 1st, 2023, because they're gonna be billed at a different rate.
Right, and not just built, but connected to your system. So when did you first provide water service to them, on what date? So
Okay.
that's and we can certainly,
But they're going to be billed at a different rate than everything built before that.
right. Yeah,
So do you already have a system that you could use?
yeah, so
Because that- like we did.
Crystal, what system do you use for water billing? Cassell, so you use most communities. Cassell, yes, so most of the municipalities in the region use Cassell or Polaris, these two systems that do water billing. So since we already have 7 agencies that are doing this, and some of them also use Cassell, we can certainly have Crystal look at how did they do, how did they
That's what I
set
was
that
getting
up?
at,
to be able
yeah,
to-
so we didn't have to.
Yeah, we have a model. There are footprints already, so the path is pretty well paved. Any other questions on this slide before I move on?
I have a question for you. Couldn't it be construed that those who spend money to bring secondary water to their home and pay for, whether or not there's an upfront cost to acquiring interest in water companies so you can obtain water? And there's obviously some infrastructure cost for homeowners, yet then they're going to get billed or did they ding into the surcharge much quicker than others? Doesn't it seem a little bit penalizing?
It's pretty much the opposite. So very few households are gonna use more than 8,000 gallons for domestic use inside the home. And whereas the secondary water has no surcharges associated with it.
Yeah.
You may even have people sometimes that have access to secondary water that may choose to go get it because they were hitting these thresholds with their irrigation out the road. So we did a lot of analysis to figure this out. Obviously, there were 7 municipalities debating
Yeah,
it, so.
I was sitting there trying to think to myself, does this penalize a secondary water user or does it benefit?
I have a slide in here that illustrates how it was determined, how much of the water we would be. How we determined that 8,000 was an appropriate amount of water for indoor use. Next slide.
I have a question.
Yes, Lenny?
Why is secondary water any of your business?
It's not, that's why it is not surcharged. But many property owners want to
We're
know.
going by the 8,000 gallons because we have irrigation water. Why? We are paying
Yeah,
every year for maintenance.
No, that's what he
It
said.
should be a separate issue, I think.
okay.
The secondary,
This-
the irrigation water isn't being metered, we're not charging for it,
No, but if you have it, you're penalized. If you go a certain amount.
if you go over 8,000
Well,
gallons a month, which
I-
is saying they're not gonna have.
I invite everyone in this room to go home and look at their water bill in January and see how much water they necessitated. But we did a lot of data analysis to figure out where to set these thresholds. And that data analysis included all 7 of the other jurisdictions, so.
The mayor's comment kind of got me confused on everything. I was following you perfectly up until we had this discussion. Secondary water is not being metered, so that doesn't count against your 8,000, correct?
Yeah, that's right. It does not. Only the municipal
Only
metered
the
water.
municipal, so,
Yeah.
okay, then we're on the same page.
The
Yes.
the secondary water is invisible, except that if we know you have secondary water service, you're gonna have different thresholds, because we know we're only providing water inside the house.
Oh, okay.
And
so
therefore,
it's
you're getting a
I
flat
got it.
8,000
The
gallons.
threshold level,
Yeah.
so that's where you're being penalized is on the
Yeah.
threshold.
And I think that's arbitrary.
Yeah, well, and my point is too, it seems to me like if you're paying maintenance to a canal company and paying upfront costs, that, for the district who doesn't involve themselves in the secondary water, they're using the, actual knowledge that you are connected to secondary water system as a basis for essentially making you hit the surcharge much quicker.
You're very unlikely to get the surcharge. You could argue the opposite. So in fact, that's what was argued when this policy was created. That if somebody had secondary water, they would never hit any of the penalties and they might be using millions of gallons of water per year. And so it's deemed that it was inequitable in the other direction, that secondary water users essentially would not hit those 15 and 20,000 gallon units because they had no outdoor irrigation.
I
So
feel
in
like
your-
it should be a separate issue.
But I'm not here to debate the
Yes,
policy.
we're not debating
The
that.
policy exists,
The policy
and it is a condition of the regional water service agreement.
Now, I have a question on.
Sure.
So when you set that 8,000 gallons, were you looking at properties that possibly had pasture land?
No,
Some of those that have that land, that have the irrigation, we use it just for our pasture, so we have to use the water from the house.
it is typically the people that would have pasture land are in that other group of properties that were built prior to 2023.
And this doesn't apply.
This only applies to new, the specific thresholds we've been talking about for the last few minutes. We're only talking about homes that were homes or businesses connected to the system after January 1,
In your
2020.
study, that typically new buyers didn't have pasture land.
No, they may have pasture land, but and I can't say what the conditions are in Virgin. Nor was I here when this policy was implemented.
Right.
But this policy is a requirement of joining the RWSA. And once you're in the RWSA, you will have the ability, if you wish, to speak to the board about, can we modify this policy? Can we move in this
I wasn't
direction?
questioning
Yeah.
to modify, I was just questioning how it came about.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Well, it's wholly intended to conserve water. So much as your tiered rates are intended to conserve water.
Moving on, Crystal, next.
So I just wanted to show you an example. This is a graph of a high water using household that has extraordinary irrigation demands. So you can see in the summer months in July, this property, this is just an example property. But they're using 60,000 gallons of water in the month of July. So they would incur a surcharge of $24. By the time you're using 60,000 gallons of water, most of these people are getting a bill that's in the hundreds of dollars. In most of our jurisdictions, so the surcharge is not that extraordinary for the existing homes. In fact, it rarely even is noticed by people on their bill once they're paying a bill of several $100s. Next slide. This, people would ask, well, what about a business, or what about a school, or how do we deal with that? Typically, those kinds of properties that have large water demands also have larger meters, and it's common practice to establish thresholds based on meter size within the water industry. So these are thresholds if somebody were to have a larger meter, instead of 36,000, they're given multiples of that depending on the capacity of the meter. Nobody buys an 8-inch meter unless they have demands for like a multi-family housing complex or a giant shopping center or something like that. And obviously they would have more water demand, appropriate water demand. Next slide. This is what it looks like for the new customers. So they're tiered to try and fit the seasonal demands. You can see that yellow line, that's what seasonal demands look like. And one of the common issues that we run into in water conservation is people, like, when I was driving here, my car said it was 109, but I was on I-15, so it probably was 109 over I-15. What happens is everybody's irrigating at these very high summer levels, and then when you get to fall and the weather cools off, they often just keep going until they run into, the first snow or something, and then they go out and they adjust the controller. These thresholds are designed to send them seasonal signals. If you continue to use water in October, the same way you were in August or September, even though you use the same amount, your bill would go up because the threshold was lowered. So this is only for the new homes, new connections to the system. And it accommodates about 184,000 gallons per year without surcharge. Next slide. This is to Heath, Attorney Snow's question about how did you figure out why is it 8,000 and why these people hit it? And so analysis of the data, we allocated 0.25 acre feet per year as being what was required to meet the domestic needs. Obviously, the size of Utah families varies. I mean, my household has 2 people in it, but I have neighbors that may have 8 or 9 people in their household. And so we try to accommodate very large families and provide adequate water without hitting the threshold to meet basic domestic needs. Next slide.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Won't the Conservancy District be metering reuse water?
We will need to reuse water when it's available. Yes.
Okay.
It is available in some places, but in fact, even secondary water will eventually be metered by state law by the year 2030.
Yeah, I've heard that this past.
Yes, and metering is one of the key principles to managing water. This just shows the same concepts we already talked about in a tabular format. Next slide. In summary, so every agency subscribing to the RWSA agrees to implement this policy. It only affects a small percentage of the highest water users, and it's intended to incentivize conservation. The money that's collected is going to be steered toward conservation programs. And in my opinion, these programs, along with the standards that we're going to talk about later on your agenda, insulate the existing population from new water demands. It basically keeps new development from coming in and using so much water that it accelerates the potential of a shortage or a crisis within a community. We ensure that we build it right from the get-go and that we hold those properties accountable for their water demand financially. They can technically take as much water as they wish. It's just gonna have a bigger financial impact on them. Any other questions?
So I have a question about the use of gray water. It seems like the Conservancy District does not encourage that at all.
No, typically, especially in the urban areas, wherever people are connected to the sanitary sewer system, our intention is to expand our water reuse system to be able to return all that water back to the community. I've been doing water conservation for a very long time, about 30 years. And some of the studies on gray water reuse, some of the people who do it, super efficient folks, really committed to using every resource to its full extent, right? But what they found in Australia was they gave a bunch of homes a packaged gray water system. You took a shower, this tank filled up, and you could use that to water your garden. You did your laundry, more water in the tank, you could use that to water your garden. They originally estimated that they would save about 30,000 gallons of water per year by putting these tanks on people's houses. People used more water from the city with the tank than they did before. And what they think is that there was this rationalized loop of saying, oh, there's water in the tank. I'm just gonna put this over here on the garden a little bit. And then they go, the tank's almost empty. I should shower a little longer. So, they didn't get the results they were looking for. So, when people try to manage it on a property basis, there can be issues. The health department usually regulates it. There are challenges when those properties that have those kinds of systems change owners, because often the new owner doesn't understand the system the same way the other did, and that can create a health challenge. And our intent is to be recovering as much of that water at the municipal plant as we possibly can.
But in our community, we don't have sewer, so we are not contributing to that.
Right,
wastewater.
and I believe one of the terms of the agreement that was negotiated relates to, starting to have sewer connections, is that right?
No, it just said that we had to join, Ash Street.
Joint Ash Creek,
That's all it said.
okay, all right. So you have to join the sewer district, but not necessarily. the
Yeah,
water
there'll be
line.
our money
Okay.
issues.
Okay. Any others?
I do have, it's not really a question, and it may be a question, but hopefully your legal counsel has looked at what Keith has raised. What I see is a potential of unreasonable classification among some of the ratepayers that are using and bringing in secondary water from the canal system. Because there's a different cost there, there's a different savings, but they're similar ratepayers. I don't know if that's a legal issue, I haven't researched it, but that's what jumps out at me. Maybe the analysis was, we're never gonna get sued because we're never gonna hit that because we've got it so high. Since we're gonna be part of the district, I hope that issue from a legal standpoint has been looked at.
Well, I'm hoping that all these things were pretty well vetted in that we had 7 cities that came to agreement on this, meaning I had 7 city attorneys reviewing all this, plus the district's attorney. So not the district attorney, but the district, water district's
The
attorney.
attorney for the district.
And so I imagine that in between the elected officials, the other stakeholders, their council, I would guess that this was pretty well vetted, but I'm not an attorney, so if you wish to bring it up, I'd be happy to.
I just hope somebody had looked at that particular issue.
Having done this work for a long time, I would say that most things are scrutinized to death, so. Thank you.
Okay, one question. So I just want to clarify for everyone that this very next thing on our agenda, which is the adoption of the resolution for or the ordinance for the water efficiency standards, are not at all what you just talked about.
That's right,
They
they're
are
two completely different
completely
things,
different
but I figured since I was gonna be here, I would like to brief you on one. And then be here to be able to help you understand the one that you're gonna be asked to pay
And
attention
then we have to adopt another resolution adopting what
In the
you
future.
just talked
in
about.
the future, which gives us plenty of time to have some
Okay.
discussion about some of these other
Just
issues.
wanted to make it really clear to everybody.
So now we will need slide 1. Are we on that item?
We're gonna go back to that?
Yeah, back to slide 1.
Oh, we're not done. Hold on. Are we going through slide 1 through?
1 through 10, yeah. Or 11.
Hold on.
All the same slides that we just looked at?
No.
We
looked. No, I combined them into one file for convenience, but they were in the opposite order of how they're on your agenda.
So what these are, is that would be the water efficiency standards that we're gonna talk about?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so, well,
You're gonna go
before
on
you
the
get,
water efficiency one.
We did not have those.
No, you haven't now.
We do now. So I want to be clear that everybody in the room understands that what we just had was this presentation. If you have your agenda, we are on item E, the presentation about the excess water usage surcharge. We are now moving to item number 1 under the action items, which is ordinance 2413, adopting the water efficiency standards for Virgin, and Doug is going to talk to us about those. To advise everyone what these water efficiency standards are. Okay, go on.
Thank you, Doug Bennett for the Water District again.
Yes.
Next slide. So as we discussed, there are certain terms in the regional water supply agreement, but I want to let you know that the state, again, has their fingerprints on this. So the state required every water district in the state of Utah to adopt some kind of uniform water efficiency standards to help ensure that new development was gonna have a smaller water footprint than the development we were building prior to those standards. So why have unified standards? Typically, cities like to have their own rules and do their own thing and fit their own community. And they want to pick and choose bits and pieces and tweak a few things. The benefit of unified standards is we use a regional water supply. And it ensures that there's equity among all of these agencies that are sharing that supply. So for example, if you were to go to when you go to a meal or something, you don't want somebody to take 8 rolls and then other people at the table get none. And that can happen in development where some of the communities will grow faster than others. And we want to ensure that all the growth across the region is being done as efficiently as possible. So this helps us ensure a reliable future water supply. It protects and sustains the regional economy. We have in Washington County about almost a $10 billion economy. And tourism is certainly one of those focal points, but a lot of the economy is tied to things that require water, including development. But also, no water is basically the fuel of the entire economy. You run out of water, you take away people's jobs. That's what happens. It keeps us from running into situations where we have to declare an emergency action due to a water shortage. That doesn't mean that can't happen because we're at the mercy of Mother Nature. But having efficient buildings and efficient development helps us reduce the potential of a water emergency or shortage. It simplifies development compliance because often the companies that are doing things, developing, planning and so forth, they may have experience in one community and then there's a different set of rules across the street. It makes it a little easier for the development community to understand what they're supposed to do and what the expectations are. I mentioned equity between communities. Everybody wants to ensure that their neighbor is just as concerned about the water supply as they are. We also have to comply with the state policy, which required us to develop these. And it can help us manage water supply expansion costs. Infrastructure has become crazy expensive. And the cost of water is going up, both from scarcity, but also from the very expensive infrastructure we have to build, either to bring in the next gallon of supply or to build that reuse system that we talked about. We have about $1 billion worth of projects to make sure we're meeting future needs of this community. And obviously ratepayers are going to be paying for that. If we use every gallon efficiently, it reduces that impact to all of the communities that are participating. Next slide. So easy things, fixtures. In fact, if you went into a home center today, you would pretty much only find these types of fixtures. So the EPA has fixtures called WaterSense. They've been tested for performance as well as customer satisfaction. They save water, but they also produce what's needed to be able to do the work in the home. And all new homes and all new businesses will be required to have these labeled fixtures. And they're commonplace in the industry there. Every major manufacturer makes these, and some manufacturers only make these labeled fixtures. Next slide.
So would there be any incentives to do some renovation of an older home? Like a rebates or anything like that? Does it?
Only, right now, we only have those incentives for landscaping. The state has an incentive for toilet replacement. in older homes, and the state also has an incentive for what's called a smart irrigation controller, which is an irrigation controller that actually gets weather information over the internet. And if it rains in Virgin, it sends a message to your phone and it says, it's raining, I turned off your sprinkler system.
I just got one of those,
Yeah,
it was
that's great.
$75.
Yeah, which almost, if, depending on what model you buy, it's almost paying for the whole thing, right? Yes. So we require those in new development as well. Now, keep in mind, everything I'm talking about, that's not for the people that live in Virgin today. It's for the people that build tomorrow, these standards, right? You'll implement them and they will only apply to future construction. We do not allow any irrigated lawns in commercial or industrial development. So a coffee shop is not gonna have a lawn. It'll have landscape, but it won't have a lawn-based landscape, which is the greatest, consumer of water in the landscape is the manicured lawn. If it's a residential home, they're gonna be allowed for 8% of the parcel to be a lawn area. So you can do, typical parcel in our region is 1/4 of an acre for most municipalities. So you've got 10,000 square feet, you're gonna have about 800 square feet of lawn area available to you. You decide where to put it. If the parcel is so large that it would be allowed, the 8% would be more than 2,500 square feet, they will be limited to 2,500 square feet. Lots that are under 7,500 square feet, we went the other direction. We said, you know what? If you're on a very small lot, nobody wants a, 120 square foot lawn. You can't really do anything with that. It becomes inconsequential. So lots smaller than 7,500 square feet will be given an allocation of 600 square feet of turf area. So that's actually more than they would get with the 8% rule. We don't allow lawn to be planted on slopes greater than 25% because it creates runoff, and we don't allow them to be planted in areas that are less than 8 feet wide because irrigation systems cannot efficiently irrigate those narrow areas. Next slide. Landscape irrigation will be accomplished with spray on the lawn area and with drip on everything else. Spray and drip irrigation have to be on separate valves. They can't be connected and run together. They have to be managed separately. The drip system has to have a pressure regulator and a filter on it that keeps it from clogging up. Make sure that it runs efficiently and that the pressure in the water system doesn't kind of just tear it apart and cause malfunctions. New development will use water sense irrigation controllers or smart controllers. And then they're required to put mulch over the top of the soil because, as you know, if you've ever turned over a rock in the desert, that's where the bugs are because there's moisture under that rock. So mulch helps keep the water in the soil. And that way the plants can get access to it. It doesn't just evaporate. Next slide. We want parks, and I'm often called, I'm like the grass murderer or something, but I like grass. I just want grass in the places that we need grass, and grass is the appropriate plant. The idea is that parks need to be functional areas. They can't be ridiculously small postage stamps of grass. Kids can't play on that. So we actually go the other direction here. When we talk about parks, we say they have to be at least 1,500 square feet. They have to be at least 30 feet wide because we don't want kids. We want it to recreate on these spaces. So we actually went the other direction. We said they can't be too small because then nobody recreates on them. So parks have different requirements. A park can't be within 10 feet of a vehicular travel area. Kids don't want to play on grass. It's next to a street or a highway. We don't want them playing near a parking lot, so we're gonna put trees and shrubs and ground covers there. They have to be a park. It has to be accessible to a large population, so it's either gotta be a public facility or it could be in a gated community, but where there's, there may be several hundred homes and those people have access to that park, that would be considered appropriate. And typically a park has other amenities. It's got benches, it's got a water fountain, maybe it's got play equipment. So that's what we consider to make a genuine, bona fide park. Next slide. Water features are limited to 25 square feet of water surface area per parcel, and they are limited to the parcel. So we just did a research project for one of our committees about water features, and they said, come on, how much water can a water feature use? And we found that even at 25 square feet, it's thousands of gallons of water lost to evaporation per year. So it's significant, and because they're ornamental, mostly people want to hear a splashing sound, they want to see some birds come, they want to view and hear running water. And we probably don't need excessive water features to be able to do that. Next slide. Multifamily dwellings are allocated 100 square feet of lawn grass per dwelling unit, and of course those 100 square feet are gonna be turned into a common area for the people in the units. The intention is not for each person to have a 10 by 10 square outside of their unit, but for those to be put together into several thousand square feet where kids can go play on it and so forth. They have to be used, we also give consideration to very small duplex and fourplex, give them more turf. That has to be in communal gathering areas, we don't put it in parking lots or medians or in front of the monument sign at the entryway to the park, to the apartment complex, that's not functional. The slope and width restrictions apply. An irrigated landscape of more than 5,000 square feet has to have a separate meter so it can be managed separately. Next slide.
So are swimming pools not considered in this?
So there are no restrictions on swimming pools in any of these policies. So that was one of the areas that our members did not feel like we're challenged. I will tell you though, having worked in the other luxury markets, I mean, Virgin's a very small town, but there are a lot of extremely wealthy people that are eyeing these communities, wanting to be close to what we have around us, right? I have seen people build swimming pools that were over 5,000 square feet. My house is 1,700 square feet. So
I know that Las Vegas has addressed the swimming pool.
they did, and the intent was, we want you to have a pool, we want you to have fun, we want you to get wet. But it probably doesn't need to be bigger than a certain size. At some point, it becomes an extravagance, not a recreational tool. And what happened was that some of the uber wealthy people were actually using the swimming pool code just to create water, because water features were restricted. They were building swimming pools just to look at. Technically swimming pools, they didn't actually swim in them. There's a home in Henderson, Nevada that has a 13,000 square foot swimming pool. So bigger than most people's entire lot. And there are rarely people in that house, by the way. Everything has to be metered, so any attached or detached single family dwelling units that have ground floor square footage have to have their own water meter. So that means people would be getting their own bill, and that has a big bearing on how they use water. And then we talked about the outdoor landscape use, if there's more than 5,000 square feet of irrigated landscape, they would also have to have a separate service for that. With the exception of a single family home that had 5,000 square feet. Next slide. So just, you're not alone here, and I spent the last year doing this in all 7 other communities, every planning commission, every council. And I answered the same kinds of questions that you have. I addressed some of the concerns. There was a lot of push and pull and back and forth. Sometimes I had to go back again and things got tabled and people had to get more information and so forth. But you, as the 8th member of the Regional Water Supply Agreement, you will be joining 7 other cities that have adopted exactly the same policies that I just described to you. I think that brings us to just questions.
So the only thing I want to point out, I'm looking at the ordinance itself. And the very last section says exceptions. And it says any exception to these standards must be approved by the Board of Trustees for the Washington County Water Conservancy District. I was at the meeting at the, where Hurricane had asked about the water feature. And the response had been no, they're not, I assume the answer has remained no today.
No, so what we did was they asked for more information.
Okay.
So I produced a report that'll be presented to that same committee about how much water those features use, but it's only up to the board. What's really important, I think, is it's hard to foresee every circumstance. And you may have something that comes along that's Maybe it's gonna be a home for elderly persons or disabled persons, and it's a commercial business of sorts. But they wanna have this lawn area so that people can come, and whatever it may be, if it makes sense, you can take that to our board. They're people just like you, making challenging decisions, but they also understand that we may not have foreseen every kind of development that may occur. And so you can go and say, hey, we have this situation, we think it merits more consideration than the standards afford. Are you okay with us doing this? And it's gonna be up to our board to give you permission to have an exception to these standards that are in your ordinance.
And so there had been something in here about golf courses, but I believe, Riker, you had talked with Doug, and then you guys modified this a little bit to take out the issue about golf courses, correct?
Well, we do have standards for golf courses, and the other cities do have golf courses, but I gotta be frank with you, we do not have water for another golf course.
Oh, we don't want a golf course conversion, we just would have said we didn't need that in here.
And I appreciate that. But keep in mind that, there's talk at our next meeting about, will Leeds join the RWSA?
Oh, did they?
And so we need to be very cautious because now you're not the last one in the room. There are other people that want in that room as well. And I imagine that after you join and get everything in place, you're gonna be as scrutinous about who comes in next and making sure that they're doing everything that you're doing, so.
So basically, I just wanted to verify that if we wanted to if there's any suggested changes to this requires us to go to the board and get an exception.
Yes,
So I wanted to point out to the council that when we talked with Tom Lacrosse, it says in here, metering, all attached and detached single-family dwelling units shall be separately metered. And when we talked to Tom, we told him that we thought it was okay for him to have one water meter.
And the planning commission was gonna look at that.
Okay,
That was not a final decision.
No,
because
we
We're talking about adopting it as.
that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying in here, it says that they should have separately metered.
Riker and I spoke about accessory dwelling units. If somebody wants to build another dwelling on an existing parcel, it was never our intent that there would be another water service installed.
No,
This is the
this is a
duplex.
duplex.
Okay,
Type thing.
a duplex at both of the units are at ground level,
Yeah,
they would have separate meters under this policy.
right. That's what I was just trying to point out. And then we also have an effective date blank in here. It's,
Well, we know we have to have it adopted by September 30th.
okay, it said the effective date, this ordinance shall be in full force effective from.
What page are you on?
So I'm on page 4, it's right under the exceptions, and it says effective date, it's like the second paragraph up from the bottom. Under exceptions, and then.
Oh.
Inserts.
What we usually have is the date that it's been signed by me.
Okay,
You may want to select an effective date that gives your planners, the people that already have projects proposed but haven't actually gotten a building permit, you may just want to put the effective date a little bit out into the distance so that people understand where you're going and that you're not expecting your planners and zoning people to be enforcing this tomorrow.
Okay.
We also, just, if there's a motion we make to approve, there is, on page 3, under 62.04, depending on, the last few words, it should say, it says depending on jurisdictional code, depending on the Virgin Uniform Land Use Code.
But we should make that change, okay?
do we have such fees and civil penalties?
Well,
Set up.
we have, for violation of any of our land use ordinances, enforcement could include, for multiple violations, up to a class B misdemeanor
Oh,
and fines.
So your recommendation, when we make a recommendation to approve this, that we make a change on page 3 to change jurisdictional code to be Virgin Uniform Land Use Code. And fill in an effective date on page 4.
Just one question, if we have some type of penalty that isn't tied to Hulu, by changing it to Hulu, do we have a problem? I can't think of any penalty now. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Deborah.
Thanks, sir.
So you want that date to be August 20th? Today's date was the
sooner the better. Or September first, some specific date very soon, so that people coming in are starting to comply with this.
Okay. I'm gonna say today. Today's date. Or make it tomorrow since I'm sorry. Great ops. All right. So, any further discussion? I think we've asked all the questions we need to know on this, and Doug did a great presentation. I don't think there's anything for us to discuss.
The only thing that I would add is that we knew this was coming when we joined the Water Conservancy. And what this does now is provide us a voice at the table so we can start giving our input into these type of regulations. Although we're 1 and 9 right now, it sounds like we may be 1 and 10. As far as a voice at the table, but that's better than not having a voice.
But we still have to finish, there's still a few more things that have.
I know we got a lot of
Okay.
T's to cross and I's to dot before we get there.
Okay. All right. So, I'm waiting for a motion from somebody.
Motion to approve ordinance 2024-13 water efficiency standards for Virgin. At the public hearing held on August 14th, 2024.
I'll second.
Did the effective date be what?
Oh, I'm sorry, you had to make those
Yeah.
two changes. I got 2 changes.
So add the effective date being today's date, which is August 20th, 2024. And the other change, reminding how you want it.
We have to
On
change.
page 3, in 62.04 in enforcement, the first paragraph, the end sentence should say Virgin Uniform Land Use Code instead of jurisdictional code.
All right, I second the motion. I'll take a roll call vote, even though I don't need to, but I will. April? Aye. Paul?
Aye.
Jean, yes. Misty?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Doug, got your ordinance.
Thank you, and,
We'll send you a sign copy.
I need that. I have to send that to the state. Thank
Okay,
you very much.
okay, thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the zone change that we previously had before us last month, and we sent it back to planning commission.
Are we gonna do council comments? Are we gonna move those to like? I'm all right for that.
I'm fine, we'll do council comments if you guys have any, if you have any comments you wanna make. We'll go back and do that and then get back to this. You must, Paul, since you want to.
Yeah, I do have a couple, mostly related, I think all related to the fire district. The most recent call for service for July is up on SharePoint, so you can take a look at those, put them in, so now you have, I think, May, June, and July there, if you want to make a comparison. And we have, instead of Tyler's moved on, I think he got tired of us, and now we have a new representative that will be here, Chad, right? Would you stand up and introduce yourself?
My name is Chad Oliver, I've been with the fire department for full-time for 22 years.
Would you say your name one more time?
Chad Oliver.
All of them? Okay.
Yeah, so I'll be your representative for the foreseeable future and. Yeah,
Thank you, Chad.
yeah.
And then correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but there is on September 11th, 9/11, Patriot Day and Remembrance Day of 9/11. There will be there, the public's invited. The second largest flag in Utah at 6 a.m. And then the national anthem starts at 7:45 a.m. and a pancake breakfast at 8, along with a motorcycle parade. Did I miss anything?
No, that's correct. So we had the flag was donated to us. It's a 60-foot by 90-foot flag. This is gonna be hung at the station by a donated crane to hold the flag. It's been donated to give honor to those who fell on that. So I wanted to happy to be a part of it.
And it's for both fire and police that have died at 9/11.
We encourage them to come out and some breakfast and.
So this is gonna be at the fire station there,
That's it, perfect.
Yeah, 202 East State Street, right on the bend there.
right there, okay.
And then the final item is the truth, I mentioned last time, having the truth and taxation hearing in September, that's been moved to October.
For what?
For the fire,
Oh, for the fire.
for the fire district. And it's just as a, yeah, no, for the fire district, because we need to support the next budget through property taxes. The fire district is working closely with legislators to implement a sales tax on tourists and others, and hopefully, if that works out, then there will be the following year, sort whatever time it takes to collect the taxes, but with that will come property tax relief. So we're
This
gonna
is
try to,
October,
the truth in taxation will be in October. The legislature, if they pass, then we'll switch more to a fee base, basis based on sales taxes instead of relying solely on property taxes. So that's the hope in the future. I know that's a quick explanation, it's a lot longer. I Joe Decker could come give us a presentation if we're interested. Yeah, and that's it, Sri. Thank you, Jack.
April, you said you had nothing?
I don't have anything.
Misty? Okay, the only thing I'll say is, today I went to the, DTEC meeting, the Dixie MPO. And I came away with two things here for Paul that I thought Paul would be interested in, which is their spreadsheets for all their infrastructure projects that you would like to look at and see what we would like to do, if you would like to find back from our town. Since you're into that. And then second, we had a presentation there about the sound wall. And if you guys have noticed, yeah, I don't see how you could fail to notice that sound wall that is going up along I-15 there in Washington. And UDOT is looking at putting more along I-15 elsewhere in St. George. And there was lots of pushback by all the mayors at the meeting, very unhappy. And don't want to see it here. And so the consensus among everybody was that it was ugly and to just don't want to see this come to Washington County. And so just thought I'd throw that out there in case anybody's looking at that as you're driving down I-15, he's like, what on earth is going on? There requires difference there. As they're widening the highway, as they're widening I-15, there's federal rules that come into play that require them to put up sound walls in certain situations.
At a certain distance.
Yeah.
Well.
And that's what's going on. Those ugly walls. So people were not happy. I just thought I'd throw that out there for you guys. All right, so back to our agenda. And we are on to the ordinance about the zone change for this property that is at Dalton, the intersection of Dalton Wash and Highway 9. And the owner is requesting that it be rezoned from rural residential to highway resort zone. They have indicated that they have no plans for the property. And that, they want to be rezoned to match all the surrounding property because they're we have looked at the zoning map, if you bring up the zoning map. Again, for the audience to look at. They are pretty well surrounded by BLM and highway resort zone, and they are just an island in the, out there. And so they have, as I said, they have no plans, they just want to be, rezoned to match the rest of the land around them. So we sent it back to planning commission at their request, to clarify if they had a full understanding of state code with regard to, what's the issue, the exact issue.
Was that they felt they had no choice in their vote. As based on a comment that was made. And majority of them felt that they actually were fine with their choice that they had made.
Okay,
So it was
that's-
sent back to them to give them an opportunity to review what they were told and decide if they wanted to change their vote. And in this, planning and zoning decided they were not going to change their vote. And that they wanted to send it as it was, the vote stand, and just send it back to us as is.
and the vote was 3-2, if I remember right.
Before, yes.
Before, the first planning commission meeting, it was 3-2 in favor of the rezone.
Yes, and it would have been 2-2,
Because they were missing, one of the.
yes, to
Or
send it
one of
back
the
to us
three
as
votes,
is.
yes.
But can't change his vote so that they can send it back to us as,
A recommendation.
yes. And the
As
general
a
consensus
positive.
was still the engineering and the engineering,
The
drainage and
geological.
everything because of the geological features of it, yes, that was the general consensus, that was concerns that were brought up.
And as we indicated, when we talked about this the last time, that those issues are irrelevant in determining a zone change. Those issues come up whenever they come for building permit.
Well, that's when you usually address them. I don't think they're not relevant. I think they're relevant. It's just a matter of degree of relevancy in respect to that, because I think that was raised, if I'm not mistaken, correct me, Steve and Ken, the geological concerns were related to the effect on the river and storm drainage off the facility, which was occurring in residential or hotel resort or commercial, but to different degrees. And so that effect on lower lying lands was a concern.
And some of the view shed as well.
Yeah, so there is still some relevancy there. I don't think it's not
That-
relevant.
Yeah,
But you're right, that the particular
Uses,
the particular geological effects will be addressed during another stage.
yes. They're not addressed during a rezone. And I mean, you look at what they could do there now anyway, even with it being zoned rural residential. You're gonna have those same issues.
a house is another thing.
A house, I mean, I'm looking here at what the uses are in that zone. You've got a single family home, you've got a guest house, there could be a public stable, public buildings, a church, a school, a home, accessory buildings. I mean, any of those uses are going to have face the exact same problems that is being raised by planning commissioners that are concerned about that. Those would have to address the same issues, so. Yet those are considered uses that are allowed in that zone, so I don't see a big difference between rezoning this to highway resort zone at the request of the owner. That's my position. Anybody
I
else?
agree.
Okay.
So we're in discussion phase, I guess.
Yeah.
When it comes time to vote, I'm gonna probably be a lone negative vote on this, because I take a look this is a very difficult decision because of what we've done in the past and how we got this set up. But within the last year, we have approved over 140 acres of new hotel HRZ zone. And we've also approved eligibility to HRZ. So if I was to add that all up, I think we're approaching almost 200 new acres. And what we've done is exchanged rural residential to HRC. So in the process, we're losing HRZ or rural residential land that's become converted to HRZ. And we talk about, and it's on the future, down on the agenda, which is workforce housing. One of the key components of affordability of housing, workforce housing is a supply and demand of land, and land's the biggest component, I think, in trying to get affordability, at least to try to make it moderate. And so as we diminish the supply of our available land for residential housing, we're just contributing to the exacerbation of the problem of affordability in trying to find workforce housing. Along with that, I kind of looked at that area and I think, well, rural residential, we could have desert gardens or HRC, and you have, I think, especially in this location, either a new or an extension of wildflower. And when the election was run that I participated in, that was a big issue with the electorate that I heard from, and I think was one of the reasons that I'm probably sitting here. So it's a choice between diminishing the availability of rural residential and creating another wildflower. I'm gonna land on the side, I think it's gonna land on the side of rural residential, especially when the new general plan is still in progress. And what I've seen from the comments so far is the idea of housing and affordable housing that would support such a decision. That's just where I'm gonna land. I'll probably be a 3-to-1.
So we had always talked about that end of town being highway resort zone. And it kind of fits in with the general plan that we're working with now. And, you know, to have that just rural residential doesn't really make sense to me because of all the surrounding zone. If you just keep rural or highway resort zone towards that end of town, I would be satisfied with that.
And the reason that would have been all right, except for the fact that we allowed so much commercial at the other end of town when it wasn't supposed to be there.
That's true.
And we've taken away that rural residential that we had expected there. So it's a creep. And it's creeping, and what you do is you put one HRZ here, and I'm part of the problem because I approved that 140 acres. I was part of that approval. But what you end up doing is you create one, then you create another, and pretty soon everybody's heading that way. And at some point, you have to stop. And so in this particular case, I'm gonna probably be the lone vote, but I'm voting against it because I don't think that's where the community wants to go.
Misty, do you have anything to discuss here regarding this?
No, I said it in our meeting, I have the same opinion that it fits and it's surrounded by zoning and it actually falls right in with our general plan, the way it is written. So I don't see any reason not to, and the geological concerns will be addressed throughout the building by a couple of engineers by the time it reaches it, so.
Checking one more thing before we go to the vote. Okay, so this was mentioned before, and you mentioned it just now, Paul, about, Zion Wildflower. And so I was just checking to be absolutely sure, but when you look at this piece of property, you look at Zion Wildflower, which is the big purple area of, well, I didn't bring my pointer. This right here, Zion Wildflower.
Yeah,
Right, and then there's a piece of property owned by somebody else, a piece of property owned by somebody else, a piece of property owned by somebody else, and then this, so Zion Wildflower would have to buy all of that wrapped around. Is that what you were referring to?
you know, well, no, my comment was that you're gonna, it's one, either you see the extension of it, or you're gonna see a new one, you could see a new wildflower there.
I see.
And it doesn't matter, it's more of an illustration. I did drive out and take a look at all that, so I kind of see how close it was.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay.
But what I'm saying is if we approve this, you could potentially see another wildflower, or you could see the extension of it, either one. Because if you approve that, then you've got the other two little pieces there, what are they gonna do? They're gonna wanna come in and go HRZ also. So if you approve this, you're gonna almost have to be willing to approve those little.
Those other
pieces.
two little pieces there.
But the same logic applies as far as surrounded by
Yeah,
a highway resort zone, and
it is right now. Those
It
other
is
two. Are.
in highway resort zone where it's meant to be from our general plans. I understand the concerns of use, but
Well, if you look at where, well, almost, if you look at where wildflower is, it's partially surrounded by rural residential.
You could say that's the flip side of that.
You could say that.
They're awfully small parcels.
So it's a domino effect. It goes one way or another.
right.
Okay. All right. Any more discussion on this? No? Then I need a motion either to approve or deny.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2024-14, amending Virgin official zoning map by rezoning parcel B 2149, currently rural residential zone to highway resort zone.
Second,
Okay, we will do a roll call vote, start with, I'm gonna add, oh no, this public hearing, it says here the public hearing was held on June 12th. There was not a public hearing when it went back to planning commission, correct? It was not a public hearing for this.
No, we held up two public hearings.
You held two.
And mailed it out both ways.
Okay,
Email
so
it.
this needs to be amended to say there was conducting a public hearing held on June 12th and then August, August 15th.
Yeah, it says it on there.
No,
it
that's what it
says,
says, June
it says it on the agenda, but in,
the ordinance.
Oh, and then the ordinance, we need to add it on the ordinance.
yeah.
And
And August 14th. All right, go back and let's amend the motion to say, that, we are amending it to say that the public hearings, there were two public hearings held on June 12th, 2024 and August 14th, 2024. Accept the addendum. Yes, it's, I need to accept amendment to your motion. Okay. All right, so I will do a roll call vote, starting April. Paul,
No,
Jean, yes, Misty,
Yes.
okay. Okay, next is the Shirley Hall zone change request. And we don't have any papers here on that because we talked about this last week. And it seemed like what we agreed last week at our court meeting is that we were going to be extending this another 6 months for approval. Or consideration, let's put it that way. 6 months for consideration because we are working on the, light commercial, neighborhood commercial, whatever you wanna call it. And Riker had a rough draft that you presented to planning commission last week.
Yes, I provided them with a rough draft for them to look at and provide me comments back so that I can continue to construct that.
Okay,
We're moving right along.
do you want me to?
Well, the only thing is, it's also, if we get it sooner and approve sooner, we'll make that
Oh,
decision.
yeah, why, of course,
Yeah.
as the sooner we get this fast from planning commission and can vote on it, it may be that it's sooner than the 6 months.
So it's up to 6 months.
Yes, up to. So, and you will not have to reapply or pay a new fee. We consider it that, but if you wanna come up and make, say, feel free.
Thank you, Mayor. So, I feel like we relapsed a lot from the last month when we talked. We were talking about different options where we could approve partially this zone change, at least the frontage in some form. But then I guess last week there was a work meeting, and now we're talking about continuing for 6 months.
I actually went back and looked at the YouTube on the meeting, and that's what we talked about, was just extending it for the 6 months. And then we also talked about, removing the other 4 parcels, and you might have wanted to combine those into,
Yes.
so that's what I listened to.
Yes, we were talking about options where we could grant the zone change maybe in part or with some conditions and not drag this out for a full year.
Okay.
Before we actually vote on it. And so we're not in favor of continuing this for 6 months. We would, what we'd really like would be a partial approval for the properties that front SR9. Exclude the ones that don't front SR9. Your ordinance says that those are available for the commercial zone. We would be okay with that partial approval for the fronting ones that are entitled to that zone change now. We can leave the ones off, and we'll agree to that don't front SR9. And then at some point in the future, whether it's 6 months or 6 years or whenever that commercial zone gets updated, then we could come back and we can reevaluate those ones that don't have frontage on SR9. So that's our request, is a motion on the zone change application for the parcels that are entitled to that.
We would have to probably, as you would know, since the way we advertised it, we'll probably have to either have a special meeting or next month.
I agree with that. It's not advertised for approval.
No,
And my mom and I were both out of town last week.
Darcy came to
Yeah.
listen and make notes.
Yeah, so anyway, so that's our request, is that we've been waiting for 6 months. We feel like we're entitled at least to the ones that have frontage under the ordinance to that commercial zone. And we would like a decision on that now. We can evaluate the other ones when we have a less impactful commercial zone on those parcels that don't touch SR9. And I thought that's what we were
Working.
going to talk, I thought that's the direction we were going.
Okay,
And now we're talking about kicking it again.
Yeah, that was the problem with, the way we ended that.
I was gonna say.
There's a lot of different options to discuss.
yeah, so I think,
So our
I
proposal
think there
is-
was not,
Commercial zone for frontage on SR9, leave the other ones off. Let's clean that up and then we'll wait for whatever amended commercial zone comes down the pipe, whenever that is.
So those properties that, cause I was the one that kind of was concerned about those properties a lot.
Sure.
Are those gonna render them useless for you, or is that gonna?
Those are gonna be
Best for you to
problematic.
Combine them into another lot,
Well,
I'm just wondering why you're not going that route. I guess is my question.
well, to be honest, we have a whole bunch of parcels there right now. And I don't wanna start combining parcels on the hope that the town council is going to grant this zone change or that zone change. We're just asking for what the ordinance entitles us to now. If we need to combine parcels to make it a buildable lot down the road, or preferably, have some nice neighborhood commercial zone we could do there, and then it'd be some nice commercial development down the road. But we don't know what that looks like, we don't know what this council is gonna give us. So we would just like to resolve what the ordinance allows now, let us deal with the rest of it whenever we have a new commercial zone. So that's the request.
Thank you.
That is all I have to say.
Okay, no, don't wait yet, I'm looking at the calendar. If we were to do a special meeting to, address what he's requesting, I'm looking at a calendar to see when we could, have a special meeting, so I'd like to all three look at the calendar.
You don't have it on there? No, you don't. Hold on, where do you have it? That's only. I don't know. It's right there.
So let's see, how much notice do we need to give for this? This would not be a public hearing, it's already had a public hearing at planning commission. All this is notice for a special meeting.
4 hours.
What, 4 hours?
24 hours.
24 hours, yeah. No, I'm looking at the calendar and I'm like, I've got.
That's what mine is like.
Holy cow. I'm actually available next week. Shocker. I know. I shouldn't have said that something's gonna happen and it's gonna get jammed up with meetings probably starting tomorrow, but right now I actually have openings every day next week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I have, what?
Wednesday works better for me.
Okay. What about you guys?
So I won't be here Thursday through,
Starting next week or this coming Thursday, day after tomorrow?
no, next week.
What do you have, Paul? What's going on?
I'm tied up Monday and Wednesday.
Wednesday night?
I'm tied up Wednesday, I'm tied up Monday,
Okay,
so I don't have those available. So with April not being gone Thursday of all next week,
that only leaves Tuesday.
that only leaves Tuesday, and then I'm gone till September 9th.
Okay,
So it's either Tuesday or
after
in
September
9th.
okay. See, Tuesday next week, yeah, I'm available that day. So we go for Tuesday, a week for today?
Tuesday.
My dear.
What?
How early can we do it?
Is this the earliest you can get here, Misty? What we did tonight at 6 o'clock?
I can be off by 4, but that puts me 4:30 here.
We do 4:30?
That's
That's better for me, I can get to a 7 o'clock water board meeting, so
oh, okay.
I can miss it though.
What?
Tuesday.
Tuesday, the 27th, 4:30, does that work for either of you two?
What time?
4:30,
On Tuesday.
that's
27th.
pushing for you, I mean, maybe,
Well,
want
I-
to make it 5?
No, it's okay. 4:30 is fine if everybody wants to go about that. I can,
Okay,
an hour and a half. I can make it.
I can be there.
Chris, if you weren't going to, I'd ask you to maybe submit something to the town in writing indicating your willingness to amend your zone change application to eliminate the back parcels. But you can make that statement in the meeting if you're, as long as we've got a representative from the landowner applicant.
Yeah, I can be here, and I believe I can speak for the, and I represent you in the meeting. She said yes.
I saw that. Paul was about to say something.
Yeah, and just so you know, the same concerns I had last time for a commercial zone is that I don't like the short-term rental and the potential gas station and the potential of well, motels, the same as short-term rental, but that type of housing. And hopefully for approval that maybe we can enter into the development agreement that prohibits
Those things.
those things. I don't know where the other board council members stand, but That would be key in consideration for me.
Well,
So,
I asked, starting in February this year, for us please to remove hotels, any kind of lodging whatsoever from commercial, so it won't have an effect.
Yeah,
Because that hasn't
yeah,
happened yet.
and another thing is it's so easy to add it back in too, and so if you have some type of deed restriction through a development agreement, then it makes it harder for those things to go in. I think those would be the incompatibility, for that district. And I think that would be the direction also on the neighborhood commercial that's coming, because those are the things that
We don't want that.
we don't want.
so I have a question though about the Stubbs situation.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What's going
I
on
heard
there?
that came up,
Yes.
so if you search the title, there is a recorded deed where the personal representative for the Stubbs, Larry Stubbs is the deceased individual, he signed that. It's a notarized deed that conveyed title to my parents' trust. And for whatever reason, the county has not updated the account information, but
Who's paying tax notes?
my parents have been paying the taxes, so, yeah, I've been paying them for years, so. Anyway, so that's,
It's filed on there, so
Yeah,
that's a point.
yeah, so there's a recorded deed where the personal rep for that estate deeded it to my parents. And so, and that's a public record, and I can bring copies if.
No, we can look at it. Thank you.
Okay, so, all right, I've got a 4:30 on my calendar, special town council meeting, the single issue of the hall zone change. And you're going to write, something that Heath had just suggested to you, amending the zone change request.
Is it okay if I just?
Parcels.
Need to just appear and state it on.
And on the record, okay,
As long as someone here representing landowner.
Yeah.
An authorized representative
okay,
makes that statement, then
okay,
say that they're willing to go ahead with a modified version of their zone change application, and we're good to go.
okay. And then, I was gonna just ask if you would think about Paul's suggestion that he had about a potential for a development agreement that would eliminate these certain uses that he has such a concern about. So if you would think about that.
Paul, I would ask the question though, if we want to go too deep into this, is there something unique to this property that would warrant the elimination? I mean, are we asking something of one landowner that hasn't been asked of other landowners who've had zone changes to highway resort? And if so, we need to be able to identify the unique reasoning for this parcel.
Well,
To restrict it.
It's the surrounding commercial that I think it's the residential area unique to this downtown. That's,
Well,
That's an odd-
and all I'm saying is,
Yeah.
that's just a thought, and because I think
it's either,
David may question you and say, why do we need to?
well, it's a question, Heath, I think a matter of, if he's got 3 votes, then I'm the no.
No, but I think it's a reasonable point, if you would identify reasoning for those requests, that it might be.
Oh, it's just simple, you just looked at how this
This is surrounded by.
this part of Virgin is downtown. And this is so unique than the rest of the Virgin that we've experienced, even if you look at Desert Gardens, the intensity of use compared to the type of uses that are existing here and the closest
I think
of all the.
I think he could easily.
Oh, I know that, I'm trying to figure out proper wording, for. I'm just simply saying, I don't
Yeah.
want us
It's a good
to,
point, yeah.
I don't want us to make a zone change approval conditioned on, the applicant entering into a development agreement to limit these things, only to have the applicant challenging that requirement as being an unfair exaction, because there's the.
Yeah, and that's what I find strange about Utah law, a little bit, the way communities approach it. What they do is they say, you know, we're not gonna approve this because of this, and then the applicant comes in and says, Well, okay, then I'll agree to these and run her into a development agreement. I think that's how it's supposed to work. And the only reason I raised that now is because
So that they can be thinking and talking.
and we had that discussion last month. And I think that was part of the discussion. You raised the development agreement as a way to.
That would be a
address
way that we could.
That's the way we're addressing it. So that's why I'm raising that. My goal is probably to know unless we handle those concerns. And I don't know where the rest of the council is on that.
Okay,
Food for thought.
all right, so we'll see you next Tuesday.
If there were one or two uses in that table of the commercial uses that the council was concerned about, I think we would consider that. But if you got the entire use table of the commercial zone, like what's the point of having a
Look at-
commercial zone?
No,
We look at it, and
And
he's identified.
He's identified the ones which
Really,
was
it's
lodging
mainly rentals
and
and
gas
gas stations.
It's gas station and
Lodging.
itinerant rental, hotels, short-term rental.
We'll talk about that. Food for
Yeah.
thought. So, appreciate it.
Yeah, all the other uses are fine.
Okay, sure.
All right, we'll see
Thank
you
you.
4:30 next week.
Great. Hey, and thank you for your time. And sorry I wasn't here. Sorry I wasn't here last week.
But, well,
We
no,
let things get off track, so.
and it was confusing, so it's all part of our fault too.
All right, see ya. All right, before we go on to the rest of the agenda, I want to ask you guys if you have any objection, if we go ahead and talk about, because I have Lenny bring up, yeah, since she's here, I don't wanna make her wait through all the rest of this, just for us to talk about her issue. So do you guys mind if we talk about Lenny's issue right now? Okay, all right, good. So. Keith, we talked about this at the work meeting. You weren't here at the work meeting, and what happened is with the survey that was done for the purchase of the church and the property across the street.
Okay.
When they did the survey, they actually indicated that 6 feet into what has been Lenny's property, they have the church property going 6 feet past what has always been the line between the church property and Lenny's property. And so,
Has he had any sort of survey document that shows that, other than historical use?
Well, talking with the home originally built in 1951, prior to anything else around it.
Yeah,
The fence line, I don't know how they had the.
yeah, but my question is, the easy way to look at that is to have a corresponding survey done of your property and to see where they're at. You might find that the survey stakes do lay right where the prior surveys, the one that was done for the town's purchase of that property. If there is, if the town is acquiring the property and looking and willing to consider something with Mr. Brinkerhoff, then, you know, after the town's acquired the property, you can do what it would like. We can have, if Mr. Brinkerhoff wanted to do a boundary line adjustment plat, and, you know, we could go through the process if the council is willing to basically agree that those 6 feet that may be in question by survey is conveyed to them.
okay, so I was concerned because, I had just assumed we could do like a lot line adjustment or boundary adjustment, as you're saying, we could just do something like that. and then-
deed to that little strip, but then you'd have two parcels and might as well just have them.
Or could we just do an encroachment?
Well, hold on, before we go on, let me read this before we go on any further.
Okay.
Should I just read this?
Yeah.
Okay. So Lenny came into the office today to talk with, Crystal about this issue. And Crystal and Lenny talked, and Lenny's the town historian, and she has so many precious town records that she wants to see the legacy of her work in history live on for years, and she came up with a possible agreement This is Lynn. Lenny came up with a possible agreement to turn over her records to the town in exchange for the 6 feet of church, of the property. In this way, the town, we would then have these records, we could put them on display, and, that would preserve the records, and they would not be potentially lost, right? And this would be a win-win for Lenny. She gets the property, and then her records get, preserved. And, so the reason this all came up is I had mentioned to the town engineer the other day about, that we'd be signing the papers on the church, and we're signing tomorrow, we're signing all the documents tomorrow, as you know. And, his response was, wait a minute, that's gonna be town property, then at that point, you can't just dispose of the town property, there's state rules that have her. And I was like, oh, well, then we need to talk to Keith.
There is a process, but that is only, there are 2 sections in the Utah code that address disposal of property. One is the disposal of a road or right of way, and the other one is disposal of property that is not considered de minimis. And one thing we've never done as a town is we really don't have a lot of property holdings. As a town, we have never identified in our ordinances or by resolution what we consider to be de minimis. Because if it's larger than, that's what it's interesting, the state legislature, when they created that requirement, it's like, if it's not a de minimis piece of real property, then, you have to go through this process. You have to, it's, I believe it's notice of a public hearing once a week for 3 consecutive weeks. And I think then at 10 days after the last one published, then you have a public hearing before the council can.
So because we don't have a town code establishing what we consider de minimis property, we
You
have
guys,
to.
you guys on a case by case basis can identify, it's not ideal because I don't want to have a lot of shifting, moving things, but for right now, the first time, you guys could say, we consider this strip of 6 feet wide by how many feet deep to be de minimis and inconsequential essentially to the town. And you probably base it off the fact that historically it's been occupied and used, whether by agreement or not, with the adjacent property.
And it's been used. And it's recently acquired, it's not something that they encroached on. So it's not the example where you have somebody that encroaches for years on town property. This is, we bought it. And that's the big difference. I don't have a problem with this.
So if we could, if we could work out this exchange.
So,
Yes.
I mean, Google is great, I think.
I'm sorry, what?
Google is a
Great
great
thing.
thing, sometimes it's terrible. Because I pulled up the Utah State, property rights. And it says if you have a fence up, you could just, if that's kind of what you always thought was property rights, you can make an agreement that that's the property. You don't have to.
Yeah,
You go back and forth, because I talked with Alpha Engineering, I use a lot of their survey, and he said. Historically, in all these old towns, I think they used to be the engineer for Virgin years ago.
they were.
He says. As you start moving around, lot lines have changed over the last 70 years. And it's hard, it encroaches both directions.
So we've had several major town resurveys over the last 90 years, 2 of which I'm familiar with. Use different points at the beginning or reference points to start the town resurvey. And knowing about a previous one that used a different one. And so we do have some issues with.
I used to mow a lawn 15 feet south into the church property that is now in the city property. That, things, and our property's here, and we maintained from our fence down to the bottom.
I mean.
And it's like,
So
goes each direction.
and what he's talking about, I was reading about, there's a concept in Utah law, case law about boundary by agreement. One of the more simple boundary law doctrines in Utah, it just says, yeah, if there is some sort of monument or something erected and it is agreed upon by the property owners, then that will be considered the property line. However, you have to go through the legal process to have a court order that, and that takes their time. If parties wanted to, simply do, we're gonna have something like Alpha Engineering, either come up with a legal description for that piece, or just do it in a map format that gets approved as an adjusted property line.
That's fine with me.
That way, you know, it all gets taxed, you don't get two separate tax notices, one for the small sliver and one for the other piece, and things like that, it just would make it a little bit clearer.
So if we, oh, yes, Jay, go ahead.
I know when we were doing the landscaping and everything for the church knew they agreed that that's where the problem might be. They went back further, but they didn't wanna, the landscaping and everything didn't match coming up there, so they said, okay, this is where it's gonna be, where I think the fence line was already there.
Yeah, if the fence has
Anyway,
been up since
And
nineteen.
the church,
Well, and so I would doubt there's been a boundary line adjustment by agreement,
Yeah, I don't doubt
but the
that.
way that we formalize it is either through conveying it in a deed, which would create two parcels owned by them. We'd have to find before we authorize the mayor to execute the deed that this property is de minimis, which we could easily do too. Or instead of just having a surveying company come out and survey a meets and bounds legal description that would be plugged into a deed, we could have them create they could do the survey of that piece and show it as amended into their existing property. And it would be a boundary line adjustment.
Make it easy.
And that, when that gets recorded, that's the equivalent of deed, it's then yours, and it's still taxed under your existing parcel.
So can we come up with an agreement that
Yes.
we will do, some written agreement that we will
Simple
do this
boundary line,
in return?
simple
and-
boundary line agreement.
Do we,
Okay.
do we
Says
have
it-
to exchange something?
And mom will
though?
still wanna
But
do this no matter what.
But what about what?
She will still wanna do this no
Does it
matter what.
have to be a
Yeah,
reference?
We can do a simple boundary line agreement, I would like to see us show that there's some consideration.
Yes, that's what I'm
in
saying.
exchange
Consideration.
for,
Yeah.
yeah, some consideration in exchange for the town, disclaiming the interest in this
For
property.
$10 and other things.
Well.
You see that all the time.
Well, it says for $10 and other valuable consideration.
Yes, correct.
Which is hereby acknowledged, you're like, what is that valuable consideration?
And it's that on that paper.
Yeah, and so we could put together a very simple boundary line agreement. Saying that, something to the effect that if these guys want to, say, pay Alpha Engineering to prepare a boundary line adjustment map, that we could waive the boundary line adjustment application fee. We could be co-sponsors of that application. Does that make sense? So we have the right to waive our own fee. And that, in exchange for that consideration and for his mom turning over all this amazing stuff that she has, that we will disclaim it, and it will do it by virtue of consenting to the boundary line adjustment and allowing it to be recorded.
Okay, Judy, yes.
And you would record me for.
One thing is, as long as I'm alive, I want to have key, I would like to see the old schoolhouse turned into a museum. But I want a key, I want access to all records.
Well, I was thinking, I don't wanna word it, but I was thinking that there would just be an agreement that the record stayed with you until. Yeah,
Well,
then they-
she wants to see it turn into something.
Oh,
She's
okay,
like,
okay.
Like,
I see,
it
okay.
becomes something, and so
Okay.
maybe she could come, we get people, if this is turning into a museum or somewhere where there's a museum, she could maybe even volunteer to come
Well, we're not, we're,
something, I mean, we're talking down the road.
yeah, that's down the
We're
road.
talking down the road.
We,
But if she wants access to them, you.
yes, I have no problem giving her access to all those records. She knows what's in them, she would be like the archivist who would know what to do, with what's there and all that. I would have no
Maybe
objection to her
council
having
may
access
want
to
to
the
appoint
records.
her as
Historian?
a special deputy.
She is a-
Okay, all right.
A special deputy town reporter who has the right to access and maintain and the responsibility to manage all records of,
That could be down the road, but I'm with the daughter of Utah Pioneers. And I know how the DUP museum works and I'd
Yeah.
like to see a committee and docents and, but that is down the road.
Yeah.
So Jay has something he wants to say.
Okay. There's also a lot about fence lines. If the fence line has been there for over 20 years, that's what it will be.
yeah.
But we need to,
But if one party, for the security of everybody, for one party to for the parties to legally
Right.
finalize that, you either gotta get a court order or you gotta stipulate to a signed boundary line adjustment map or deed.
and so
Either way.
we just want everything to be legal and formalized. That's
Because
all
whatever
we're trying
time
to
we
do.
agree to this and a new council 5 years down the road.
Well, that was my concern.
No,
Yeah,
we don't
that.
agree to this.
Crystal, the very
So
first
the way
time
that
we
we make it
installed
legal and binding.
the markers there. Cause I know at one time when they surveyed, like you said, if they surveyed from that this way, what if Alpha comes in and finds out we've got 6 feet of your property that you're buying now? So.
Let's
Would-
just
it would kind
let's
of be-
make it legal and
Next time,
formalized.
I'll-
It's all-
next time, I'll-
it's all-
So,
And then we don't have to worry about this.
no, and that's what I didn't want to happen,
Yeah.
is because this was kind of blindsided to me today.
Well, it's a shock, I think, to everybody.
Okay, so,
But thank you for putting this in, because I still gotta get back home.
yeah, I realized, that's like, I'm not gonna make you guys sit here to the end, and then if we don't even get to you, we need to get to you.
So do we need to do the Alpha engineering, do I need to call?
Yeah, I think that would be, the town will incur the expense of me putting together a simple agreement. Cause I would have to review any agreement that you drafted and, maybe make some revisions to it anyway. So I'll draft it.
I don't want it to hinge solely on me giving the town
Oh,
my stuff, because I've always planned on doing that. But I have documents that go back to 1929, when the house, when the town was incorporated,
awesome.
original ones.
We
And-
would sure pick that up.
And so I probably have thousands of dollars worth of them.
Yeah.
You've never been to my house, Gene.
Yeah, I was there.
Well, Gene, since you've
I've
been there.
been there, oh, you got more?
I'll put it together, so you guys are
Will
paying
you
for.
email to her? And then.
I'll put it to Crystal.
But you're gonna go ahead and contact Alpha Engineering,
Yeah,
or what
but
I
I
used
should
to.
go ahead and contact Alpha Engineering and ask.
Exactly what you're
Sarah
supposed to
to-
do.
Yeah, I'll have them come in and they'll do a survey on all the existing corner of it. And then we have the meets and bounds, we have all the
So.
actual GPS coordinates.
And whoever you talk to, at Alpha, if they have any questions about, we can have them call me.
Yeah, Gwen's been with the family for the last 50 years, so. I don't know if you know Glenn or not.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, he's the one I talked to right in the beginning about when we saw it. He said, well, it happens all the time, and normally you just come back and say, that's it.
So there's no big deadline to get all this done. I just wanted to start the process because I want to know how we're going.
We're not the owners still.
Tomorrow, we're not the owners until
So, okay.
3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon,
But-
4 o'clock, whatever it takes us to finish all these papers. Yeah,
Because at some point in time, I'm gonna be dealing with it.
yeah, okay. Okay.
So
He's my boy.
I just wanted to be.
Anyway, for your information, the middle of the street is where the east boundary lines for all the property going up, because in the old days, right in the middle of the road on Flat Map, the oil company built a maintenance shed.
Oh, what
That's
shed?
all.
A maintenance shed,
Okay,
so they moved the road over to go past it, and that.
So
became the
that's
road.
why you have a dog lake, and that's why all the surveys are messed up.
okay.
It should actually come out in front of that house that's this side of the Oklahoma. Look on Google.
Okay, okay,
Okay, well, we'll write the email on.
okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Jude.
You're welcome. Okay. So, the next four topics are all, is it 4 or 3? Yeah, the next 4 topics are all things that we want to refer to the planning commission. 4, that's what I said. Did I say 3? 4. The next 4 things are all things that we're going to refer to the planning commission. And, 4 and 6 should be fairly easy for us to take care of. 5 is gonna take a little bit of talking with Riker. But number 4 here, is this ordinance that, was prepared by Paul that is making, we're just amending the, what chapter is this in the, oh, chapter 20. Chapter 20 to say that the DRC is a public body. And therefore we have to provide notice pursuant to, Utah 52-4-202. Now, Paul and I talked about this as, when he proposed this, and I told him I disagree that it's a public body and that we have to provide notice, but I'm just one vote. And we've tried to figure out what was the easiest way to amend the code.
So this ordinance doesn't say that it's is or isn't a public body, that we're just going to give notice.
No, it says,
Well,
go to
It
page,
says it is a public
it says
body,
it is a public
and it
body.
will provide notice according to the notice website.
it's not a public body.
Isn't it use taxpayers' funds? Why isn't it a public body?
It doesn't expend any funds.
Yeah, it does. It uses taxpayer funds. It uses the services of this building. It uses staff time. And from what you hear from all the presentations, that constitutes a public body if they're using taxpayer funds for support. So to eliminate the problem is just to say we deem it's a public entity and therefore it should be provided notice.
And Paul, my recommendation is that I don't think that it should be a public body and, it shouldn't be necessarily open to the public because the purpose of it is for individuals to come and vet possible ideas, things of which they wouldn't want to present in the public.
But wait a minute. When you presented the ordinance to us, to the DRC, at that meeting, you said to Gene that this would be acting like a regular body. The public could come, they can't talk, but they come and observe what was going on. And that was part of the reason we approved the concept of the DRC. That it was a
The
public
reason why
meeting.
we needed to have a way in which staff and independent contractors and utility providers of the town to interact with prospective developers and or the development community in a way that issues and standards can be reviewed.
So how come we have the language in there about the compliance with the Utah Open Meeting Act?
That's already in.
It is.
I mean, why even put that in if we didn't have to provide any notice whatsoever and have the meeting open?
Paul, I understand. I just. I know how these other, I've sat through. Probably, the equivalent of the DRC meetings with just about every municipality in this county. The only one that I would well, there's a couple small little towns that I haven't attended, and I don't even know if they have an equivalent of DRC, but those meetings, you walk into those meetings and it is like around a conference room table, and the only people who are there are representatives of the utility providers and city staff. And you don't even you get called back when it's your time, when they're done, you get like a half-hour time period. And you don't even, other people who are on the agenda don't even get to sit in while the discussions are happening.
Well, that's what the other communities do, but when we approved that, the concept that I approved was the ability for the public to observe that meeting. So when we approved that chapter, and there was a discussion with Gene, how do I do this? Well, yeah, the public's invited, but they're not entitled to speak. And so the question is if you have a meeting that's open to the public, how do you have an open meeting if it's not advertised and the public doesn't know about it? And so what I'd like to see, and the rest of the council can maybe disagree with that, but I want to at least see it posted. As a practical matter, individuals will come in and they will sit and watch, and maybe that's the way it will end up, there's nobody ever coming in, but it gives an opportunity for the public to attend if there's something of their concern that they want to see. If there's something before the DRC that affects them, they at least want to come in and listen to it. And that's a policy decision. Yeah, I mean, and that's where I'm at. If the advice is it's not a public meeting, I want to make sure that it's a policy decision that we advertise it so the public can come and observe it.
Okay, how about this? On this, if we were to take out the words, since DRC is a public body, but leave in and shall provide notice as, provided in Utah Code section 52.
That's where we're at now.
Well, no, when we added, well, no. I am saying, this here is what you added, the underlying parts.
Yeah, the problem is, if you say, provide it as, and then you interpret it as it's not a public entity, then you just don't provide the notice.
Yeah.
That,
Okay,
so.
okay. I wonder,
Maybe the best thing is.
I think this is more of a question of, it says right in the current ordinance that it will comply with the Open Public Meetings Act.
right,
And to comply with that requires public notice.
that's his whole point, that's his entire point.
If it is a public body, and so you're trying to address the public body issue there. Okay.
But don't we have to allow public comment if
No.
if we make it a public body?
You can,
No,
That's not what we.
no, and it states in the ordinance that there won't be any public.
No.
No, it says no public comment unless the chair.
Paul, can I give you an example? I sat in a JUC meeting in another municipality, representing a large development group out of Denver, Colorado, who has a massive national commercial tenant who is considering purchasing a piece of property in that municipality. And they needed to know certain questions and answers with regards to certain frontage and access issues to this parcel. And they would not, if that information was disclosed, they would not, it highly confidential. The landowner who is going to be the seller in this did not want anyone to know, because if they were talking to somebody of that magnitude, then, it could be because there's some other pieces that this corporation has looked at acquiring to do the same thing, not just on that owner's piece. And so there is a lot of reasons why certain things have to be confidential, yet you need to have a venue where you can interact with, road department and utilities department and utility providers on various types of development issues that may or may not allow for the development of a contemplated project. They don't want, this buyer does not want it on the front page of the St. George News or anything like that, and which it would be
Well,
if they knew about it.
if it's contemplated, it's beyond the contemplation stage because they've already done their homework and contacted somebody, and now they're about ready to file an application
They had,
with the town.
they had out-of-state engineers prepare a conceptual plan to show to the city staff. And, but again, like allowing that to be public knowledge that they were contemplating asking questions about this prospective big box coming on this prospective property would be very concerning to the property owner or the seller, because there are a couple of other property owners within a half mile that have just a bit as big.
This doesn't preclude them from seeking certain advice out separately. It only deals with certain aspects as you're in the step of the process. And I've seen where other communities have used DRC as an open meeting, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it precludes that. I mean, there are different ways you can still process it and protect that confidential.
So there's gotta be a compromise somehow here. When we did the DRC thing, when that chapter was created, I have to agree with Paul that this was contemplated, that public could come because of what had been going on before. What brought us to the point that we even got to chapter 20 was so much controversy in town, so much upset, so much, that's why Paul and I are both on the council. I mean, that's why how we won.
Maybe.
And so
maybe
there has to be
we
something.
amend, chapter on the DRC to allow for, I don't wanna call it an applicant, but a person who wants to be on the agenda to make some sort of designation of confidentiality or something like that, which, I don't know, and maybe the chair or, I don't know how you do that, but so that if it's for the DRC's eyes only.
It says right in the ordinance that all of these meetings shall be noticed and procedural requirements of Utah Open and Public Meetings.
Yes.
And it also says that they should be open to the public, so
Yeah.
we already say that, so why don't we just notice it?
That's the only question. It's already open to the public. And so the way I think you handle the confidential issue is you get your questions answered separately through the zoning administrator or through staff. And then if you got something that's truly confidential,
Legitimate.
you can close the meeting, can't you, pursuant to,
Yeah.
so I mean, that's what you do. You just close the meeting and you follow the open meeting act. and
Well,
close the meeting.
if they're a public body, they can't close it. They can't, there's no exception under the Open and Public Meetings Act. For the infraction of other people's trade secrets and confidentiality. It's only for the city in the acquisition of real property. Does that make sense? I can't have an executive session and ask the public to leave, if I'm a public body, unless it's one of those exceptions. And the request is coming from not the town to make the meeting executive or closed, but by, a person on the agenda. Who wants to be able to really kick the tires openly without.
There's no exception for trade secrets.
That's a long list of exceptions.
I'll pull it.
No,
If I'm not.
yeah, but I think you can get I think there are ways you can get around that.
Okay, hold on. Yes, Kristen.
Just from experience, we have the public coming to at the very beginning to our DRC meetings, at the very beginning. I'm gonna go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Make you understand every day, yeah. we had an incident during a meeting, after the meeting was closed, where the public decided to either, they've done this twice now, where one, they attacked our engineers or the developers outside. Or two, after the meeting, they came, we as staff leave because the meeting's over. And they come and attack them here inside. They wanna know what's going on, they wanna see it, and they are attacking our people that we've invited. And they wanna ask them questions, UDOT, for instance, or the engineers that are here, and they have questions. Because we didn't ask those questions for whatever reason during the DRC meeting. And so the public insists that those questions need to be asked.
After the meeting's over.
After the meeting is over, and this has happened twice. And our engineers and UDOT was not happy. Not. And the developers that were here with their projects were not happy. One happened when we had two different projects and we had the project, they did theirs, they left. People in the audience then followed them out there and attacked them out there. And the other one was, we wrapped up, staff left, they were still in here getting attacked.
Let's use the.
That's because they not words attack.
Confronted.
Confronted, yes, it's
Sorry.
not attacked. Yeah. I mean, that's the word attack.
It's, I get it, people wanna know what's going on, but some of these projects are not even, they're dead in the water projects too, so. I don't know, what do we do? Just-
Yes, right.
So just a question for Heath, under the definition of public body in that, under a 7A
I've got it right here.
is vested with the authority to make decisions regarding the public's business.
Yes.
Is the DRC vested to make those decisions, or are they providing a report?
There are
to
some
land use authority?
recommendations to the actual land use authority.
So they would not be vested to make those decisions.
Well, I think you gotta read that more closely. Because they are vested to make recommendations.
They can make recommendations. And so some people would argue that they are involved in the decision-making process.
Yes,
Even though they're not actually making the decision.
yes.
I would tell you also, the way that we've been treating DRC, my understanding is, and I haven't been attending any of the DRC meetings. Paul, maybe you could answer this better than I. Isn't the DRC the one who's signing off on construction drawings? Like all the utilities and stuff like that?
I don't know, I haven't attended one yet.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that you had.
No, we haven't had that many, and I had to ask what days we hold them on, because I didn't know.
And do they come to, planning and zoning and make a recommendation?
No,
Staff
what-
passes the recommendation, it gets put in the planning commission's SharePoint. bill.
if it's something that goes to planning commission, not everything that goes to DRC goes to planning
So
commission.
these
Only some.
professionals we're inviting to come to our town to solve this issue that we have with people not trusting what's happening because of past events. But we're having these people come and they should not have to have it as a public entity. Because those decisions can be reviewed and the statements can be made in a public entity, which is our planning and zoning commission. We can review those and they can be available for review by the public. Those meetings, they shouldn't have to feel that they are being confronted, or they shouldn't have to feel that their trade secrets are being given. Or that they are going to have somebody scrutinizing their plans in a meeting or right after a meeting. When those can be presented through planning and zoning. That was the purpose of the DRC in the first place, was to show the community that professionals have already reviewed this and it's met our criteria. I do not feel like this is a public entity. I feel like almost like these professionals are going to feel that we're attacking them, saying that their opinions are not valid by putting it out there. When we can do it another way.
Do you think that you feel confident that all of the information from the DRC has been given to the planning and zoning, so you know what's been happening at the DRC meetings? I don't either.
Couldn't you go to a DRC?
We have-
meeting as a
we have-
planning and zoning member?
I don't.
We have not had a single DRC meeting yet where anything from there even went to planning commission. That has not
A
happened,
lot of things are
other than maybe,
building permits and.
But these are entities that are giving a third party opinion because it's the electric company. It is an engineer, it is Ash Creek, it's not people that have an investment in our town. These are outside entities coming into do.
Rocky Mountain Power.
Rocky Mountain
the-
Power, that's what the
Creek,
electric, Ash Creek. So they're not people who live in our town that are making these decisions. That's why we ask them to do it as a third party.
So,
So, yeah, I get all that, and that makes sense, but if that information isn't passed on to planning and
So a
zoning, then
report needs to go from DRC
maybe it hasn't been happening.
because we haven't had them,
We
we
haven't-
haven't passed on yet.
the only thing we've ever had at DRC that went to planning commission was Labrie and they didn't even have to have a DRC. Because when they had already applied before we ever created the DRC. And so when I asked them to please, would they have a DRC meeting in January? They agreed, even though they didn't have to. And so they went to DRC and then they came in with this final plat recently that really had nothing to do with what happened at DRC. All they wanted was this final plat. And then it got put on the planning commission agenda to approve or just recommend or not recommend the final plat. But what happened at the DRC was not anything to do with the final plat. So anyway, there has been nothing at the DRC yet that even went to planning commission other than that one thing.
So, Unplugged Resort, you said they attended 2 DRC meetings,
Yes,
so did none of that, did all of that, nothing?
that's not going, that was a permitted use.
Oh, so anything that's a permit.
Permitted, if it's permitted, it does not go to DRC. And it's a conditional use, it will. But a permitted use does not.
So Virgin Goods attended 2 DRC meetings, CUP application and process.
And they have not yet done anything to send it to planning commission yet. It's not done.
All I would like is that we send out a notice on when this meeting is, so how can you have a meeting where the public can observe if you don't provide a notice? That's all I'm asking is that they provide a notice.
I'm just laughing because it's devolved so far to nothing.
Sorry, Paul, don't mean to make it, all I'm saying is that I'm even, in response to your proposed ordinance, I'm asking the question, do we want to relook at the DRC ordinances from a policy perspective and determine whether we want to make these public meetings?
Well,
Where the public
this,
can attend?
well, this was Paul's point, which was I would say that's something we might want to consider, after we've actually had more DRC meetings, maybe a couple of years from now. But so far, we haven't really had that many DRC meetings. And, the public came to a couple. I think we should give it a little more,
But the public has the opportunity, if one of the 5 types of applicable land use applications are coming, that go to a DRC, are coming to the planning commissioner council, at that point, at those levels is where the public has the ability to
right,
comment
yes,
and stuff like that.
but,
So when you're trying to create an efficient scenario where actual developers or prospective developers are coming in and want to get rubber to the road type level directly from utility providers or from town public works on certain issues or town staff, as to whether this would comply or not comply, something that they're proposing would comply or not comply, or what conditions the town might put on some sort of approval, is it the most efficient way to have that process subject to public review and scrutiny? Or is that kind of a refining process so that when it actually, one of those 5 types actually comes to the planning commission, it's much more refined and has been evaluated by many eyes for code compliance and, maybe specific questions of the property owner has been addressed at the DRC level, then it's more of a situation where it seems to be like the town staff and the applicant are on the same level. It got somewhat in agreement or understanding so that it gets then properly presented and not vetted for some of that technical stuff in the public eye, and that comments, because usually comments from the public are kind of a policy type comment. They're not usually gonna be saying, well, I mean, actually, in Virginia, if they could. That doesn't comply with this requirement or something like that.
Well, here's what I think, we should just send this to planning commission, like it is. And then planning commission can talk about all this, and then when it comes to us afterwards, then we can discuss all this, but at this point, I would say, let's just go ahead and send this on to planning commission and let them deal with it. Yes,
It keeps it moving.
okay, so let's,
I move, that the ordinance to amend chapter 20, requiring public notices for public meetings of the DRC be referred to the planning commission.
I'll second that.
all in favor?
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
And then I also,
Did you get
for
that, Crystal? Were you, yes, she said no.
number 6, I move that we refer to the planning commission, the ordinance to amend chapter 4.02 concerning planning and zoning.
I'll second that one. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
you missed 5.
I know,
Oh, we
that's,
skipped, we
that's
skipped that
fine,
on
it's,
purpose.
Yeah.
We skipped that one on purpose, and so now we'll go.
I move
Which
that,
one did you just do?
We did number 6.
number
I think
6,
there's no types of.
number 6. I'm on number 7, I refer to the planning commission, whether to create a new use in a commercial zone for duplex or long-term rental only and such accompanying regulations. Tom, thank you for being so patient.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
I move for resolution R 2024 resolution, the water rates and enforcement requiring for the loan funding for the construction of East Water Tank.
I second it.
Move for adoption, I should say.
Yeah, that was to adopt. Do we need any discussion on that? The water rates enforcement, just so you know, oh, I did say that, that's required for the loan funding for the construction of the East Water Tank. And so, all in favor? Aye. Okay, Paul?
And I move for approval of resolution 2024-S resolution adopting revisions to Virgin Town's capital improvement program policy.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so now we're gonna go talk about number 5. This is the 3rd time that Riker has come to our planning committee, our meetings to talk about subdivision ordinance, and we're fine, we're gonna talk about it today. Okay, so we looked at this at the work meeting the other day. And you guys, the way we left it at the end of the work meeting is that you guys were gonna review this and we were gonna answer, if I understand right, we need answers to everything that's highlighted in yellow. Correct?
And I can go over those briefly if you'd like to.
Okay. So one is on, if you're looking at the attachments that we got, the this will be page 25. Is the first yellow highlight is page 25 of our attachment. And Paul, I want to thank you for running through those, motions so quickly. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my fingers do too.
Yeah, well, you can go back and listen. But, that's why there's a recording, but,
Oh,
I really appreciate that, thank you. Okay. So we're on page 25, your attachments there, that Crystal had put in. Oh, you've got,
I copied it all separately, but they're the same. I just didn't know,
oh, no, the way the copies that she'd given us, yeah,
page 25.
yeah, you got it, okay. That's the first highlighted yellow section, you got it there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think what Riker wants is some answers before this goes to the planning commission.
Yes, that's exactly what we want.
Yes, that's.
Yes, because then you can, once you get answers, we can send it to planning commission, and you can do another one of your motions, Paul. Once we're done. Okay, so the first one was the appeal authority should be town council, and I think that cannot be the town council, or does it need to be somebody else?
So that can be designated by the town, it can be the town council according to state code for this, or if the town has.
The town council can be the appeal authority if they're not the one making the final decision. And because of state code and our all beautiful knowledge and understanding that our state legislature has, they decided that they wanted to strip the
Town council.
town council and planning commission of really any land use authority with regards to the approval of subdivisions.
So,
Residential stuff.
Residential sub-
so in that case, I would be in favor of the appeal authority being the town council.
Cause that's your second bracket. That's your
Yeah,
second
I'm
bracket.
fine with that. What do you think? I think that's, what do you think? Okay. So there's your answer there for number one. So then right below it, you have the planning commission highlighted in yellow with a comment here.
Yes, so state code, as he mentioned, has removed the town council from the approval process of subdivisions. What they allow you to do, what they allow municipalities to do is designate an administrative land use authority. That administrative land use authority can be the planning commission, a staff member, or a combination of both, or it can even be a subset of the planning commission. How this code's written right now is it designates the planning commission as that administrative land use authority. I just need to know if the town prefers to remain with the planning commission or would prefer to go to a staff level or somewhere in between.
So this is for approval of the preliminary plat and any subdivision improvement plans.
So this should be.
This is the bottom page, this
This
is
is right
right
below
below.
the appeal authority section. Yeah.
Yeah, it says
For
approval.
preliminary plat and subdivision improvement plans, the administrative land use authority shall be. And right now it's designated as the planning commission and the draft ordinance, but it could be staff if the town would prefer that. Most of the municipalities we've been doing these for have elected to have their planning commission.
As I say, I'm not either way, I appreciate that, okay.
Only see the second one.
City of St. George is the only one that went with staff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Record community development.
And based on the size of the community.
Yeah, they have a huge community development plan.
Yeah, they've got staff, they got staff.
a lot of subdivisions.
So then the next page, you have highlighted the words public hearing.
Yeah.
So,
So
are
state,
we given an option whether or not they don't have a public hearing?
state code says that you may hold up to one public hearing for the preliminary plat, so it is not required, but you have the option to hold.
Okay, I think that's what we want.
I think that's what we want.
What do you, yeah, okay. And then down below, in instances, number 4, in instances where a developer abandons or otherwise fails to take timely action to address corrections or complete a project, the application approval shall lapse, a preliminary plat application expires if it is not approved by the town within, and you put 6 months. So
Yeah.
what are our options there?
That time frame was just a placeholder. The town can determine what that time frame should be. If you want to allow developers more time, the point of this is if a developer comes in and you identify, or staff identifies deficiencies in their application and gives it back to the applicant, and the applicant fails to bring that back in a timely manner, then they would have to reapply and go through the
If they
process.
fail to make a complete application, then that application from a timing standpoint for entitlements and things like that, would not apply. And, we can put whether or not they have to pay a new application. Because currently our application fees are not refundable. So you apply, but you apply incompletely and we ask you to make additional submittals and you don't timely do it within 6 months. This says that, your application can be deemed to have lapsed and you would have to reapply.
Start all over again.
Play a new application fee and things like that, so it's.
Unless an extension is given.
Unless
Because we-
and it allows for.
Didn't we say though that we thought not, and this is a question for Riker that's in the businesses, is 6 months sufficient? With the way the building and the engineering and,
Engineers are still somewhat backlogged. But I don't think that 6 months
Is that reasonable?
is unreasonable. Now, I would tell you, the next one that he's gonna talk about is basically the expiration of your preliminary plat.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't get, I think 6 months is too short, because there is a lot of moving, and we've seen that with some applicants who have gotten preliminary plat. That's an issue of a lot of things, because they may be dealing with other utility providers, other body politics, who are sewer providers, or fire district on things, and so I think a year is more reasonable than 6 months.
on B, but
And
on A.
that's fairly common, I see a lot of cities.
Like, do you feel like a year is sufficient time on B? Just from an engineering standpoint, with the business the way it is and.
Yeah, typically what I've seen with other municipalities is that they allow for a year and then a lot of them allow for an additional 6 month or year extension.
Is that on the final plat you're talking?
Yeah, he's talking about he's talking about final plat.
Oh,
She's,
I'm talking
she's
about
asking you
plat.
about an incomplete application
An
last.
incomplete application,
So if they have to have it re-engineered or.
They
Yeah,
never
so-
really do much engineering on.
Wait a minute, are we talking about A or are you talking about B?
I'm on B.
You're on B,
She's
she's
on
talking about B.
Still a preliminary plat.
I know, we're on the preliminary plat,
Yeah.
both of them are preliminary.
And I asked-
One addresses the application, the other one addresses
approval.
the
That's
continued
why I'm on B.
validity of the actual
Yes,
approval.
That's why I'm on B.
so you're talking about the approval.
Yes, I'm talking about.
So the way that this ordinance is set up, the applicant should have all of their, what we currently call construction drawings are now being referred to as subdivision improvement plans. All of those are submitted up front. So all of those things are addressed in the approval of the preliminary plat. And there, once you get to the final plat application, there isn't much left to, I would say there isn't much left to engineer at that point.
Yeah, but as you say that, if you're talking
Someone here.
subdivision improvement plans or complete construction drawings up front at time of application for preliminary plat, that could take longer than 6 months, especially it could be out of control because whoever's reviewing it and asking for changes like the DRC. So
Yes,
Just
so you just mentioned 1 year on B,
1 year for
then
B.
6 months on A, and
I
1
don't
year
know
on
whether
B.
6 months on it is long.
So just to clarify, the 6 months would be after, it wouldn't include those review cycles themselves.
Gotcha.
But I do see what you're saying, and if the town determines that that's not sufficient, they can
Okay.
change the ordinance.
I see.
So we can extend that the one in A, we can extend that 6 months if need be.
Yeah, so if you choose to in the ordinance, we can designate that as a longer
I mean,
time.
after, like if we set it and left it
You're
at 6
talking
months,
8 to 12A?
You,
yeah,
No,
no, 4.
4A, we're on
Four.
page 26. We're on page 26,
Four.
4A and B, we had 6 months and 6 months. And we're talking about, you mentioned that B should be, you thought a year, and we're questioning whether A should be 6 months or should it be can we extend that?
That's what I'm asking, is after we create this ordinance, if it's 6 months that we leave in here,
We
And
could
we-
add an additional, section there that will allow. for
they could say we
extension.
can make the town council, or however we word it, can extend this if circumstances are.
Yeah, it would be worded
We have a
similar to this, to saying like, if the applicant came in prior to the expiration of the application, then the administrative land use authority could grant an extension. And so it wouldn't be the town council granting an extension of the plan.
Yeah, it'd be the planning commission, yeah, so that's.
Town council won't
Because
necessarily.
we've had kind of a situation where they've had to ask for extensions on preliminary plats and things, so that's why I'm asking that.
I want clarification in C,
First,
C.
You're talking about the requirements?
It says the preliminary plat shall be prepared by a licensed land surveyor or engineer. It shall include the subdivision improvement plan, which is what we have always called construction drawings, and shall be consistent with the subdivision submittal checklist. So are those being submitted at time of application or after approval?
At the time of application.
Okay, so I don't. My point is that if you apply. And it goes to the DR, if you apply for preliminary plat and you've got your preliminary plat, which is quite conceptual. But then you've got the construction drawings to back up and show you all the details, and you have to submit that up front, which is fascinating because normally developers don't want to spend the money on all that engineering until they know that they're at least conceptually vested in this number of lots and these types of things, but it's saying beforehand, then I question whether if it goes to DRC and DRC says you need to change road around or this, the angle of that intersection that you're proposing doesn't meet our standards, you need to modify it, maybe move it over, or something like that. Then engineers gotta go back and start redoing construction drawings or making some significant amendments. And I don't know if 6 months is.
But if we give them the right to request an extension,
Okay.
then I don't think it matters. It's just, it's a timeline to keep them moving.
we could do it on a case by case basis because
Yeah.
not all of them need that.
My question is, do we need them to keep moving, or it seems like development wants to keep things moving? We're usually, that's kind of taking a proactive, push them along approach where.
Well, yeah, and I think we want to keep them moving because, well, for the last 2 years, I've been getting grief, and this is just an example at the fire board meetings about all the dust and burden because we don't keep the projects moving. So as a community, you want that project to move and not sit there because it's not getting anything to the tax base. If it's a commercial project, you want it online so you can start getting the funds in and the citizens can use it. So
I
I
don't
think.
know that this has anything to do with construction being started. though.
No.
It's just the application.
No, but you know, you keep it all moving in the process and they just ask for an extension, so you don't have something sitting out there for a year and then everybody's going, well, I don't remember that. And
Yeah, and by the time it rolls around, we're well forgotten.
Yeah.
But at least this way they have to come in and ask for an extension to get it to 18.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's your policy to make.
yeah, and we can always come back and amend it if it's not working.
So we're gonna say 6 months then?
And then add,
4A.
4A is 6 months, 4B is gonna be 1 year.
and then where would you write, you put in there somewhere about the extension?
These are that's coming.
Yeah, so I'll add that in. It'll say something to the effect of the applicant requests an extension prior to the expiration of the application.
And do we need to put that is, they have to request it through planning commission? Or does that imply?
From the administrative.
Yeah, it'd be from.
For the land use authority.
Okay, perfect.
Riker, you'll also need to change 1812A. To 1 year also.
Yeah, I'll make sure that all those
Okay,
reflect that, because
so that next one, 1812A is gonna become 1 year instead of 6 months, okay? Right,
So, Riker, have you, reviewed our subdivision submittal checklist?
so what the subdivision submittal checklist is, what we've done in this is we've taken the requirements for your preliminary plat and your final plat and your construction drawings. we've taken them out of the code and placed them in a policy. That's not a requirement, it sounds like we can place those back in the actual ordinance. The reason we have removed that is because the town is required to provide a checklist to every applicant that applies for these
It's gonna be a
processes.
new checklist based on
Okay.
this new one,
I think
because
we-
our old ones are.
Yeah, I would go
out.
just getting to the point.
And so those requirements can be changed by the town, that's another reason why we placed it in kind of a policy.
Okay.
And so that if the town needs to add additional requirements, they can do so easily. Or if they see that some requirements are not necessary, they can remove those easily as well.
And then the other question I have is, are we keeping our current subdivision regulations, or are we putting new ones for commercial projects, mixed use projects, and well, we don't have multifamily, but mixed use.
We're not making the distinction, right?
Correct, right now, there's no distinction between.
If you want,
The only-
we could carve out.
I would like to carve out the distinction for commercial.
The only
And
distinction
mixed
right
uses.
now
Yes,
is that those uses are not subject to the timelines in this ordinance, meaning the review timelines. So while for residential, you have 40 days, the town has 40 days to review a preliminary plat application, 40 business days. Those commercial entities, commercial industrial mixed use, they're not subject to those timelines. They're exempt from that. The town can take as long as it needs to reasonably evaluate those.
But I think what the commission up here would like to see is a separate process for commercial and
in our code.
mixed use in our code.
We would like to have.
We don't wanna follow what was forced or mandated by the state on us.
On commercial, which is
On commercial.
generally the most intrusive type of
Yes.
uses,
Yeah,
more so than residential.
so commercial and mixed
With
use.
that, I'll check on that to see if that's within the scope of the DWS. The commercial, industrial, and mixed use may be outside of that scope. They may have to fall under that.
So, yeah, that's fine, I understand what you're saying, yes.
And that's, I mean, yeah, we can either amend that or
Well, what,
we just exclude it out. This-
what he meant,
I understand that.
to pay,
Yeah, I do. But there's two ways to address it.
Yeah.
One other thing that does fall within the scope of this that can potentially help the town is there's a part of state code that allows for what we've been calling simple subdivisions. It allows for subdivisions up to 10 lots, to be exempt from some of the requirements, some of the subdivision requirements that are being mandated.
I don't want that.
So what it would allow is for the town to implement a process where subdivisions up to 10 lots could potentially come before the town council.
Oh, I see.
Um,
If they're exempt from this, then we can make them come to us.
Correct, and so, but it has to be.
I just,
I don't know that you could do that,
I don't think,
because that's less restrictive and we're.
yeah, they're exempt from subdivision regulations.
Yeah.
God help.
Then we can't go back and re-regulate them as a subdivision, then we can go through a process that.
Would that be a separate ordinance?
So it'd be a separate section, a separate type of subdivision within the subdivision ordinance. The way that state code's written is that the applicant has the option. And so they can elect to go through the simple subdivision process, or they can elect to go through the standard subdivision process. And so they could choose either way. Most municipalities that have done this have chosen for it to go to planning commission or to go solely through staff. And some municipalities have chosen not to allow 10 subdivisions or 10 lots, but 2. And so that's an additional process that can be added. It falls under the.
We have a division of land waiver process that we follow, that I'd like to, I don't think that we should allow that opportunity to be exempted and almost be unregulated from
Right.
10 or less. We are, and we have historically in this town, considered the split of land in anticipation of future development. As that term, or it's called division of land, as that term is defined in state code, is not considered a subdivision. And so we've done division of land waivers where we still review the proposed lot split, and we issued them a division of land waiver certificate, which they can record with the deed that they use to split the property so that the recorder's office knows that it has been authorized or acknowledged that it's not, that it's exempt from our subdivision ordinance. I'd like to provide him with some language to put in there for that, because I do think that there is, you know, a need to be able to do that for agricultural purposes and in anticipation of future development.
Real quick to clarify, just that simple subdivision process, I misspoke, it's not unregulated. It's only exempt if the town provides an alternative process.
Oh,
So what you could do is make it exempt and give them an alternative that's
Right.
different, and nobody's gonna go through the
That's what-
alternative, because
If it's.
nobody's gonna go through the
that's
town
more
council.
streamlined than this is.
Yeah.
Been streamlined.
So like some municipalities have done, it sounds like you have a similar process for lot splits.
Yeah.
And so can we make those two separate ordinances, or do they need to be combined into this?
So we can do either or, that would be covered under the scope of the DWS grant, so we could put it into this ordinance.
Because it could be its own section,
It
or
would
it
be
needs
its
to
own
be part
section,
of
it would be
this.
designated as its own
But
section,
it
whether
could
we
be
call it a
established.
lot split or a simple.
I think all those types of things that are types of divisions of land or subdivision of land should all fall.
So they should all be within like our current one is, where
In its current
everything's in the same,
Yeah.
okay, that makes sense.
I think the mayor's right, we don't want that exclusion.
No, but I do like the division of land and everything to be, I would like that all, I'm with Keith on it, that it needs to be.
Yeah, I agree with people on Tuesday.
Okay, so this other stuff.
If
will-
Dayton could just figure out a way to do a division of land so that the back half was not included and it was big enough that it was a legitimately used second half that could be subject to a rezone to a light commercial.
He just said that.
Mayor, I just have one more,
Yes.
I'd like direction on, so for the final plat, we designate an administrative land use authority to review and approve that.
Okay, hold
The
on,
way that
did we miss that?
No, that's down further.
That's down.
Oh, where?
It's in 12.
We've been dealing with preliminary plots, now we're into.
Oh, for goodness sakes, I thought we already addressed that, did we want to? Well, where is it? Page 29?
29,
Right, that's where it was, where are you?
my page numbers, I'm looking at a different, I guess, version of the ordinance in my page.
So it is part of
It's part
the
of
final plat began, and you go all the way over to review. And it's number 12.
Yeah,
Of the review.
12A, subsection number, appeal authority shall be town council.
Yeah, but you want, it's the next one down, D. The,
Signature, because we already decided on that.
That's if you want the mayor to continue to sign off on the plats, most, there was some.
but who approves the final plat?
Yeah, so that's what I want to address is under F. We designate a separate administrative land use authority to address, to review and approve the final plat. According to state code, it cannot be the planning commission. You can't require planning commission or city council approval or town council approval for the final plat.
Correct.
And so,
The reason being is because most of the vesting and the vested rights really attach at time of preliminary plat. And so there's been a lot of lobby to the legislature from home builders associations and stuff like that to say, hey, don't come and try to tinker with us after you vested us with this, then you try to make last second changes at the final plat stage.
Yeah, so it says here, it says for final plat approval, the administrative land use authority shall be a staff member or other individual or board appointed by the town.
Would it be DRC, would that be a
That's
proper role of
It
DRC?
could be the DRC, it could be the town engineer, it could be.
Then they really would be a public body because they're making final
Yes,
decisions.
and the DRC makes sense because you've got the engineer and you have a zoning administrator making sure that everything's in order for the. It's a thought.
I'm not opposed to it. I don't know.
What'd you say?
Just the town engineer.
I was wondering about the town engineer.
I think DRC, but
Well, they've already been to the DOSD by the time it gets here.
it's just a matter of making sure everything's done correctly.
And
But-
every other.
But if I lose out, my choice then would be engineer.
Yeah.
I like it.
How about, can you put in here, as we send this to planning commission, can you put in this section? Suggested, yeah, town engineer or DRC, and we'll see what the planning commission thinks about it.
Give it-
Yeah, let's see what that recommendation.
And are we worried about the signature of the mayor, or is
I
that?
do like the engineer, because when you guys all made the, Labrie go back to an engineer and look at it.
April's an engineer, that's why she said it.
No.
I was just gonna say the attorney, but.
Go back to an engineer to look at, and having an engineer, just because engineering, they know what is all supposed to go on versus.
They've
the
already-
Administrator.
They've already looked at it, they've gone through the process.
Kind of what you're.
They can give it a final, they can give it the final.
Okay, so the other line, the other thing that Misty was just asking is on the same page up at the top, he's got signature of the mayor, highlighted in yellow.
I
If
can,
it, if it wasn't, we did not, if it wasn't the mayor, who else would,
No,
That needs to be the mayor?
a plat where there is an acknowledgement and acceptance of dedications. It needs to be done by the mayor.
Okay, all right. And I think that's everything in this,
Anybody else.
I think that's everything in this subdivision, ordinance. So, is there a question?
When will this be going, you know, when this will be going with that question?
I'll have it written before the end of this week.
I'd like to look at it more closely. I quickly glanced at it. But as I saw it, I thought there were a couple of things that I'd like to see us use some uniform defined terms here that, and there were just a few little things, like I said, the division land waiver section and things like that, that I'd like to do some, a little bit of tinkering to. So that the council or the planning commission's got it pretty
Close, yeah. And when you look at, when you say administrative land use authority, why don't you just say planning commission instead of using that word in?
Land use authority.
Well,
Yeah.
we can do that, and, but we'll have another section that says, pursuant to Utah code.
Yeah.
The Virgin Town Planning
Is the
and Zoning
land use
Commission shall be the administrative land use.
Yeah, and then,
Yeah, we just use planning commission through the rest.
yeah,
Okay,
So
so
did
now,
you send my comments to Ryder to look at? One thing we talked about it at the meeting on Thursday.
what comment?
So I put them on SharePoint and you said that you were going to forward them to him because one of the ones that I was concerned about was the development yield that's on page 32. And we talked about the base development yield is 1 dwelling unit per acre. And then it goes on to give all these bonus conditions on open space and whatnot. And I was concerned about the fact that we cannot necessarily reduce the size of that, like with these bonus points, because we don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
So-
Yeah.
While this ordinance is a repeal and replace, some of this code has come from your existing subdivision code.
And April,
That's
that's been the way that the town has been reviewing and analyzing subdivision developments under that development.
I'm just
yield.
saying that we don't have our groundwater,
Protection.
protection study done, so it's hard for me to agree to reduce the size from 1 acre and to smaller.
Well, the yield is 1 residential dwelling per acre still, even with credit for open space. It incentivizes preserving open space by allowing there to be clustered smaller lots.
We're talking Rio de Janeiro.
I know. Well,
and
But it doesn't end up being a residential dwelling unit more than 1 per acre. It has to be a yield or a blended density.
I looked at that, April, and that's already our existing
No, I know.
language. So what we might wanna do is consider it a separate amendment to that.
We can do it now when we're redoing it, I'm just saying. It would be a fairly not dramatic, but a significant change in the way that subdivisions have been approved in this town for as long as I've been 14 years.
Okay, so in the meantime,
Well, we need a recommendation what we're doing with this.
exactly,
Here,
that's where we're
what-
going. That's where I'm going. Make a recommendation and then,
This is number 5, Chris,
yes,
so
Yeah.
I move referral to the planning commission, the proposed ordinance. I'm not gonna say repeal and replace, because I think we're gonna amend chapter 18 subdivision ordinance as we discussed today with all the discussion. The reason I'm not gonna say repeal and replace is because we may want to decide to retain some of those sections with respect to commercial. And so we're just amending chapter 18, and of course,
It's a complete amendment.
it was a complete amendment.
Amendment and receipt.
Yeah, and so I don't want to say repeal and replace, just say amend and, per our discussion. And then planning board could take into consideration April's concerns with respect to that provision.
Okay, that's the motion.
That was the motion. Second.
Do we have a second?
Second,
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I have one last thing before we adjourn. So, I've been interviewing people for, permit clerk and the parks job for both Jim and Kim's jobs. And there was a person that I interviewed that had a lot of computer experience. Decades. So I have talked with this person and asked him about if he would be interested in working for us part-time, to do update the website. Do our website updating and GIS, all the GIS mapping that I would like to have done in town, which Nick had said he has found quite a few places in town, quite a few things. Every day he's finding things that he wants to have mapped, GIS mapping. So I would like to hire this person to do a lot of computer work that we need done here in town. And, we would need to amend the, budget to add this, let me hire this person. So since we have talked about a need to update the town website, and I've talked over a year about needing GIS mapping, I would like to be able to hire this person and amend the budget to include his pay. So what are thoughts?
How much are we talking about?
I have all of the part-time people at $22 an hour. And it would obviously be part-time. We're not fighting full-time job.
How many estimated hours?
I don't know. I figure it's gonna start off at no less than 20 in the beginning, because there's a lot of stuff to get caught up on. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in the beginning. It's one of those, it's sort of like with, Randy as the emergency manager, there's a lot for him to do to get things where we want it to be, and then after that, it's maintenance.
So is there kind of a job description then?
No, I'm just making this up, as we're sitting, as I interviewed the guy.
I see.
And I was like, because we already know we need to have our website updated.
Right.
It doesn't need
We
to
talked
be
about that.
updated. We talked about,
April,
we have talked about
it would be
this.
good if you wanted to help with that job description, because there's plenty of map, like mapping.
Mapping, the GIS
quasi
mapping,
Civil type.
there's so much.
Aspects, GIS that it need to be.
So, there's so much, and then the other, so I will come up with the job description, that's easy enough. But, the other thing too is where I had to come back in for a second interview, so I could really go over his background with the computers. And it's quite extensive. And so, I was like, we need someone like this we have quite a need, a lot of stuff for this person to work on. And then the other thing is that,
Would he be an employee or contract employee?
I was gonna make him an employee. I was not gonna do this independent contractor. It was not my plan. So I would like to be able to talk to him again and make him an offer, but, I need to find out if we would be able to get him. But, because next month, in September, it's going to be the end of the first quarter, and so we're already going to be doing a quarterly budget amendment. And so I would like to be able to include this in the quarterly budget amendment. So if not, we won't have the GIS mapping done, we won't have our website updated. So, thoughts?
I think we need to get mapped in for like all of our water.
Oh, we-
whatever.
Nick came in to me the other day and said that he was, he had a meeting with the Water Conservancy District and that he was really upset with what we need to have mapped and do not have mapped, and that he is concerned. And so, and then I said, well, we have a lot more things to map. He said, oh, I find stuff every single day that we need to map.
I think it's imperative.
I think it's imperative. My only hesitation was and I don't think it's much of a hesitation, because once it gets through all that, the work's never gonna end. So there was two things. One, we're making him a full-time employee. We gotta be able to think of, we're gonna utilize him for the next year and keep that. So what we're really doing is creating a position and hiring for the position. And that
Yes.
becomes a permanent position until we decide not to fund that position anymore. And there appears to be enough work, and there will always be enough work for them with the way technology is. So I'm all right to provide that we have the money.
And it's gonna be a part-time position. you
And
said,
that's
not-
And yes, it's gonna start
So
off,
we can control the
Right.
expenditure and then
yes,
adjust.
it's gonna start off part-time, but I fully expect that as things go along, there's going to be, as you said, there's going to be more and more and more.
The hesitancy was not about, it was just, not initially, it was, we created an employee, and I wanna make sure that if we create an employee, that employee, as long as he's doing his job and the work's there, he's got a reasonable expectation he's gonna continue.
Yeah, I have another thing that I would like to have, some software I would like him to write for us, where I know what I want it to do. It has to do with public works, and,
You probably should let the city inspect before you go and have it, most of the municipalities in their public works has gone to city. inspect.
yeah, this is something different though. I know what City Inspect is, and, this is something different from City Inspect. That, I've done some demos, and the software is so expensive that I won't even propose to the town that we go for it because it is so expensive. But it was so cool what it could do, that I was like, this guy could write a program, it'd be great. So-
May I get my annual, not a dig in, but,
Oh, yeah.
reminder in that until we have this issue resolved, by adding another employee, you're just creating more of a need for a city manager.
That's where you were going. Okay, all right.
I call him the technology specialist or. what?
That's, yes, exactly, because, when I found out,
IT per se.
he himself said technology
That's what
specialist.
he needs.
And did you have something else?
No.
Okay, and do we have any new employees?
No. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Sorry, yes, sorry.
Who's sitting over there?
Yeah, I've been employed. Okay. So, sorry, Shyla, I do not know how to pronounce your
It's
last
Shyla Cleavon. Why?
name. Yeah, that's why I said I don't know how to pronounce your last name. But Shyla will be, taking over as the permit clerk for Kim, and Kim is training her. And then we did hire, a man named Daniel Zembic to be, to take Jim's position. And we have Jim's position, what he's going to do next, this particular person, we have, Nick and I came up with this as we interviewed him because of his skills all the skills this guy has. He will do parks. And then he will be also in charge of, maintaining all our equipment, servicing, cleaning, oiling, all the work to maintain all of our equipment because he's got such a background in that. And then he will be the person who is going to maintain our facilities when we have a new town hall. And this, he is going to be facilities maintenance, maintaining the equipment and the parks. And so I have to rejigger the job description that he came in and applied for because with the skills he had, he said, oh, this is how we want to use this guy.
Are you,
So,
are we going to deputize Shella?
we probably will. Because she's, in addition to doing the permit clerk, she's going to be the person who will be attending the planning commission meeting. And doing the minutes for that.
And then eventually we can maybe work to having our offices, some plan in the future to open on Fridays for urgent tests. Yeah. Welcome aboard, Shadow.
Yes. I can't believe I said no. You asked me how to do it, boy, so I was like, no, I was looking right at it. We don't have to do it.
Well, actually, I thought you were gonna go first before, motion to adjourn.
Wait.
Oh.
Now what?
Planning commission summary, 4,
Oh,
5,
yeah.
4th thing, you got
We,
that on there.
we promised to do that.
We promised to do that, okay.
So I don't have to really-
No, that's not what it is.
We may not need you anymore after this.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't think it's the liaison, that's not necessary.
We'll discuss that, but I'm pretty good.
Okay, so, the summary for planning and zoning is that we have referred to the planning commission. The, what was number 4 on the agenda, which was amendment to chapter 20, requiring public notice for meetings of the DRC. That is going straight to planning commission. That does not need to go through Riker because it's only 2 tiny amendments in the code. Chapter 6, number 6 on the agenda, same way, this ordinance amending, chapter 4 for the planning commission was so, minor what the changes were, that is gonna go straight to planning commission. Number 5 was the subdivision ordinance, that is going to Riker to finish up the changes that he's working on. And then the only question I had was number 7, where we were referring to the planning commission to create this new use in the commercial zone for a duplex, for long-term rental, and then the accompanying regulations that would be in chapter 8. I did not know, I was questioning whether that should go to Riker first, or should it go straight to planning commission? What are your thoughts?
Do you want Riker to create the ordinance first?
I
and then
think
let
that
them-
was the intent of hiring Riker, so you prepare the ordinances ahead of time.
Okay,
So
Well,
I would say
4 and
run it
6
through them first.
4 and 6 don't need to go to Riker because they're so minor, the changes, but 7 and 5 and 7 would.
It won't take Riker long to do that
Yeah.
other one, but
Okay.
at least
So
the planning board doesn't have to drop it.
it's coming to you, but first it's taking
A
the.
detour to Riker.
And then it'll come to you through Riker.
But 4 and 6 will come to you.
So
Yeah,
this is a
forensic
commercial
control
zone, a new use in the commercial zone for a duplex.
Yeah.
For a long-term rental, not a short-term rental, and then, the accompanying regulations. And we'll send you what we talked about.
I have some, if you want me to put I need bullet points for
Okay.
that one. I
For
can
that
send
one,
them to
you
Riker
can send that to
instead of taking-
Riker, okay.
Director, and let me give you input on the subdivision ordinance before we wrap the final.
And I think the way we're doing it now, I don't know if we need a liaison, but let's see how the next month goes.
Well, I just wonder, my only question to that is an explanation. If you
Yeah,
feel like an
yeah, I got-
explanation is
Needed as to why.
I'll let zoning decide. I won't come to the next one and you guys decide,
Run that by me again.
Whether you need,
liaison or not.
Do you need the plan, do you want?
So from the,
Would you
from the
like
council
for this
coming
to
to
be-
planning commission saying why we're referring things to you.
I greatly appreciate it whenever you.
so the answer is keep her.
So,
I can go.
But I,
Okay.
And I watched the meeting, so I appreciated your input to
as
Ken,
long
not
as you
your
guys know, I'm
Ken,
not here
to.
to tell you what to do. I'm only there to
Yeah,
inform.
that's a great point.
I'm not there to tell you what.
You're there to, always there to convey information.
We can't.
Right. Okay, motion to adjourn, is that what Chris is looking for?
Yeah.
Yes, this is what she's.
That's it.
Okay, all in,
I'm telling him no, because he's trying to run.
Okay.
Go.
all in favor? Aye.
I bet she was.